Thank you. Sorry we're a little late. It is Monday, April 30th, and it is 7:17. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Mosher, Mrs. Oden,
Here.
Mr. Kaufman, here. Ms. Raymond,
Here.
Ms. Timmons,
Here.
Ms. Hohensee,
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Present.
Mr. Garino is here, Ms. Porter,
Here.
Ms. Sweeney,
Here.
Mr. Gillis.
Here.
Other attendees, Dr. Mosley is here.
Yep.
Dr. McKinney, Ms. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Donovan, Ms. O'Gara, and Ms. Bastoni. Did I say your name correctly? You did. Okay. And we have a quorum.
Okay. And the clerk will say the prayer, and could we have Ms. O'Gara say the pledge?
Can we please stand? Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all of our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this evening, we have a presentation, the CTE Machine Shop presentation. I believe Ms. Bastoni is going to be presenting that. So thank you. Welcome. Welcome to all the people here. We have a nice crowd tonight.
Thank you. Before I start, I just want to thank Mary Ann Dustin. The machining manufacturing program was a passion of hers. She worked very hard to get it to where it is today. And I wanted to thank Adria, who is the vice president at W.H. Bagshaw, who's here today. The whole U.S., well, some of the U.S. First National Robotics team, we're so happy to have you. We have some members from our sector partner initiative who are here also, and then we have 3 speakers who you will hear from in a little bit. So I just want to make sure I thanked them for coming tonight. So the machining manufacturing program at the Nashua Technology Center. I just wanted to reintroduce who we are, the Nashua Technology Center. Some people are new to the board since we presented last, so very briefly, there are 30 CTE centers in the state of New Hampshire. We are currently the largest CTE center. We have 19 programs offered. We also offer additional elective courses. And just as a friendly reminder, 93% of students who enroll in CTE programs graduate high school compared to the 80% average. And then also 75% of CTE graduates will stay in a 2-year or 4-year post-secondary program. And I just think it's great to remember that. So, why we need to turn the machines on. I am going to briefly list some important statistics, and then we're going to hear from the folks who really matter. Statewide, there are 68,908 jobs in manufacturing. 37% of those are in Hillsborough County. There is an estimated 25% growth rate from 2014 to 24 in New Hampshire in jobs that require computer-controlled machines or robots to perform. That includes metal manufacturing, machining manufacturing. The average entry-level computer-controlled machine tool programmer in metals or plastics, now this is for the Nashua dairy area, will make $18.80 an hour. An experienced employee will make $21.14. Those are outstanding numbers. And the last one I want to lead with is an experienced computer numerical controlled machine programmer in metals or plastic in Nashua dairy area will make $31.19 an hour. Fantastic again. So that's it from me. I think it's important that we hear from the community members who are here to support us. We're going to start with Nick Serpa. Nick is an alumni of our manufacturing machining program here in Nashua, and he's a professional working in the industry. Come on down, Nick.
Hi. I feel like I have a little red carpet. So my name is Nick Serpa. I'm actually going to, instead of kind of talking to you about the program, I want to do a little exercise in imagination. So I want everyone to take a minute to imagine themselves as a high school teenager. And I want you to kind of think back and think about, we all know that hindsight's 20/20, right? So if you were to go back to yourself as a high schooler, you would definitely impart some serious wisdom on what you would do differently. And so there's interesting things about what we would do differently, right? We know that we got our first jobs, we got our first friends, we might have tried a sport, or we might have tried a different hobby. But there's an interesting thing there about why didn't we do things differently? And there's certainly an aspect of nature and nurture, but really we're presented with opportunities as high schoolers, as teenagers. And what's really important about Nashua School District is that we do offer a lot of opportunities. There's some amazing programs here. There's astronomy, there's marine robotics. There's a lot of programs here that are really fascinating and let high school students find what their passions are. And there's a missing chunk of that, and that's the machining program. Now, as myself, I was a graduate of Nashua High School South in 2006. I really wasn't that fond of high school in high school, I'll be very honest, but the one thing I loved doing was machining, engineering, and doing CAD. So as much as I wasn't so energetic about some other things like sports and most academia, I really looked forward to coming to school, working in the machine shop, learning about SolidWorks, learning about Inventor, learning about how to use the machines. And that's what I was really passionate about. It's really where I found my element as a student. And it's what made me pursue a job actually at W.H. Bagshaw. And actually Lou was my boss at one point, and so was Adria. And I was right in Nashua. I found out it was an area I loved, went to Nashua Community College, where Mark is actually an instructor there. And I moved on as an industry professional. If any of you are familiar with Arc Energy in Nashua, that was a big solar company I worked for a while. Also moved on to continue my career in engineering. Bought a house when I was 23 years old, signed my first mortgage, which is very impressive, right? So, and I have an associate's degree. So I was able to find my element in high school through this program. So what I'm asking for as someone who went through the program and found passion through it, for your support through it. Thank you.
Okay, and next we're going to hear from Mark Dodge, who's a professor at Nashua Community College. Hi, Mark.
Hello, hello. Well, thank you all for coming tonight to hear us out. I think this is an important step for Nashua to bring this back for a couple of reasons, and one of them is a selfish reason. I teach the precision manufacturing program over at Nashua Community College, just down the street from us. And frankly, one of the areas where we have kind of a weakness is in the traditional student, one coming just out of high school. A lot of my students, I teach day and night, a lot of my students are non-traditional students. That is, people who are changing jobs, changing careers. People are tired of me hearing say this, but last semester I had 3 grandfathers in my spring semester. I've had MDs, PhDs. I have a master's in mechanical engineering. These are all non-traditional students, especially in my evening classes. But the one area that really needs a boost, and this should be Nashua's role, we should have 100 students coming from Nashua High School to our college. We should have thousands of students here. This is an opportunity to bring this program back. This is a viable career. The need for people who are skilled in this trade is going to get exponentially bigger. You looked at the statistics that Amanda put up there. Those are facts. If you talk to any manufacturer within the state of New Hampshire, where are these people going to come from? And really, this is the place to start. This is the place to start. And again, in my own selfish interest, I'd like to see more students come from Nashua. We haven't had them for several years. And this is something that can be corrected immediately. Looking forward to working with the teacher who will be handling this. I've told Amanda that I'll be happy to help in any way, shape, or form that I can during the summer to prepare him or her for this position and everything, and I'm happy to do so. This is an important step for Nashua, as well as our college, too. As I say, I have a certain selfish interest in this, but more importantly, it is to the benefit of the students. Not every student from this high school wants to, needs to, or can afford to, or should go to a four-year college. And that is something that we have to recognize and celebrate too. Because if you have in 2 years, you come to our college in 2 years, some of the statistics that were mentioned in terms of wages, Nick, 23 years old and a homeowner, nothing too wrong with that, and without a staggering amount of debt. So those are the realities now, and I hope that Nashua sees fit to bring back this program and have it the success that it has been through the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last, we're going to hear from Lou Davis, who is the CNC manager at WH Bagshaw and an alumni of our program.
Right, some tough acts to follow there.
They were pretty good.
But as Amanda said, I graduated Nashua South in '95. This was one of our projects here, which is a safe door. We actually built the whole safe, but it's over 100 pounds, so I didn't bring it in here. But this is basically, you know, anybody's resume that took that class. You know, you walk into a company with this and you're pretty much hired on the spot. But we learned this was a 1-year project, 2 periods a day. Everyone in the class made one, and most of the people that took the class are still machining. Could be earning, you know, $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and yeah, I mean, the program was great. Yeah, I'm just thankful I took the class.
Good. Yeah, terrific.
That's it.
That's good, Lou. You did good. So, in your packets, you had letters of support from community members. You also had a 5-year plan, so I'm not going to go into that, but it just basically includes marketing, relationship building, reflection, data collection, and professional development. And I just want to take some questions, but essentially the message is we need your support to do this, and it's an exciting thing to do. Okay, so now I take questions? Okay. Ms. Van Twyver.
Thank you. I want you to know you have my complete support. My first job was with the Code X Corporation. And my first programming was to program a wire wrap machine with paper tape. And then, so I go back a long ways with manufacturing. And then the second job I had was CAD, computer-aided design, where the VAX 11750 was the first machine completely designed by CAD. So you have my complete support, and thank you for bringing these people who spoke so eloquently about our program, and I think this definitely has to go forward quickly as possible.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I too would like to thank the members of the community and their support and the letters and your appearance here tonight really demonstrate the community's backing the program. I'll double on Ms. Van Twyver's support just to let you know we are as enthusiastic about this program as we can be. And to that extent is my comment. Now you have it in perspective. I'm the biggest fan of CTE. Half our kids go on to college. The other half should be having career ready and should be technically oriented, or maybe there's a third choice for those kids that don't know it yet. But for kids that want this track, in my world of the view, we'd have 2 high schools. One's a technical high school, CTE all day, and the other would be academics. Will that ever happen? Probably not. But here's my comment, and I appreciate the fact that you pulled together a 5-year plan, but to me, it's unacceptable because it has to be on a much faster timeline. For me, it's not. I've been on the board 2 years. Those machines have been idle for 2 years. It can't wait 2 more years to get it up and running. So my challenge to you is, how do you get this done for September? I am really, personally, I'm not interested in 2 years. And I'm saying that in a good way, okay? It's with the utmost support for the program. So that's my challenge to you. And I have one other point I'd like to make, and what is being done with the guidance counselors to promote CTE in general and advanced manufacturing specifically? We have to let the children, our students, know about these programs, maybe even in the middle school, so they can start lining themselves up, knowing this track even exists. So please, if you can answer that question, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Kaufman, just can you clarify the question? I'm sorry, just so I can.
Yeah, so what is being done with the guidance counselors to promote CTE in general and advanced manufacturing specifically?
First of all, challenge accepted on the first part. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised and happy. And secondly, we're working hard with guidance. We have meetings scheduled with the middle school principals. We've already had a meeting with the middle school tech ed and middle school guidance professionals. They've come up, they've toured North, they've toured our marine robotics program. I have an email out to set up a meeting so that we can have all the principals from the middle schools on board, and we can start to develop a vision for the entire tech ed FACS longitudinally. And I would like to see it in the elementary schools, right? That would be the ideal, is that we have that whole plan. But so we have that in place. We're working on it. As far as guidance, I have had meetings with both guidance directors. We've had meetings with the directors of special education. We've had meetings with the directors of ELL. I just got out of an ELL meeting today. How can we partner ELL and CTE more? How can we partner special ed? How can we partner so that we can bring more people around the table in support of CTE? So lots of good things are happening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say that Mr. Mosher, who we couldn't contact tonight, would also be in support of CTE. He's a big proponent of that. And I just want to congratulate you on your marketing for CTE, because as a parent who has children who are students at Nashua High South, I see the CTE pamphlets all the time, and your big banner and open houses. The CTE is there all the time, marketing to students and getting the word out for the CTE program. So I just want to say that you do a good job and congratulate you and commend you for that, for your efforts in marketing the CTE program.
Thank you. Ms. Hohensi.
Thank you. Do you know how many people are interested in this machine shop if we get it running by September? Because I thought we had to put in the class requisites for in February. So I don't know how we can do that, but if you can manage to get over that hurdle, that'd be great. Also, I understand that you have a couple of consultants working in CTE now. I heard that you have 2, one as an interim director and another one for marketing. Could you explain how they're helping to pull all this together?
Currently, the 2 people that have visited our programs are paid for through the Perkins grant. They have been offering their expertise, one in the area of marketing. As Mr. Kaufman alluded to, we can always use more support in that area, and we hope to be working very closely with a former CTE director who's retired now. He has come in and touched base with me and worked with us in some ways, but that was through the Perkins grant. We do hope to bring him on more regularly.
Do you have any idea of how many students you could start up with this machine program? Because I understand that you might need more than one instructor with all that machinery. Do you have any idea of how that will work?
Good,
I'd like to just interject here. Number one, before we make those projections, we got to find the right instructor for that. We have to grow the program. That's a level of marketing as well. And I appreciate a 5-year plan because that shows that there's some time for to assess where we're going, to make some refinements as we start to grow the program, and certainly that is the most prudent way to kind of move forward. To make that estimation on how many students are going to enroll right now would be premature, only because we have to see the enrollment and where that's going to go. The fact that we have some alumni back here to really not only show, but it shows, in fact, for some of our kids who are 18 years old, you said you're 23 and you own your own? Okay, but you were 23 when you owned your own home. I mean, that really answers the question for most of our kids. Where do you see yourself in 6 years? And where can you be? And I think the professor was very astute, and I appreciate the comment when he said, sometimes, going to college isn't for everyone. Sometimes it's an opportunity to engage in something where there's I would call a STEAM or a STEM component to a career. So all of these variables will factor into enrollment. So the fact that I think you gave a nice presentation on, quote, turn the machines on, I think that's another way of kind of selling the program. The CTE program in general is really, and thank you for being here, Amanda. I think you've done a really nice job. But the fact that, there's an innovation piece to this where we're introducing a drone course next year, that's only going to make our CTE program move from the vocational component to more of a STEAM or STEM feel for our students, which will, in my mind, can see the student would attract students that want to take that AP calculus. They can take that AP calculus, but actually see that AP calculus really play out in a practical sense through some of our CTE programs.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. And that's part of why I think the U.S. First Team is here, is to show that when the vision would be to be manufacturing parts for the drones, manufacturing parts for the robots, the marine robotics, really bringing that full circle.
You have a question?
Yes.
No. I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank all of you. It's nice to see the enthusiasm for something that is good for our kids, that leads to a job. And to the first team, 3 years ago, I believe it was, the coach of the first team came to me and said they couldn't get the parts made for the robot, even though we had the machines here in Nashua. And it was a real negative for the first team not to be able to have the machining done. They had to go to another school to get the machine parts made for their robot. So thank you for coming, because I know that's a big part of your program. I know how intensive your program is for 2 or 3 months. I had a son who went through the first program, ended up in engineering, and coaches now for the first team. So for you kids, it's a good way to tie everything in and to get an extracurricular activity. So I am hoping that this comes together for all of our students. So thank you, and thank you for being here, First Team.
Thank you, Ms. Bisconi. So I have a question about turning the machines on. So like many others, I'm chomping at the bit to get this going. My husband's an engineer, and when he was in school, he didn't learn CAD or any of that till he went to college. And so the idea of giving kids this step up is very exciting. Does the Perkins grant that we have now cover the cost of turning the machines on, or are we looking at another future grant?
Mark helped us Mr. Dodge helped us figure this out. The Perkins grant we have now would allow us to turn the machines on in September. However, they do need upgrades, so the next Perkins grant, we would write the upgrades into that, and it would cover the cost for the additional. So we could get the machines turned on, the kids could start working. Mark would be happy to share some of his curriculum ideas with whomever we bring on board, the teacher, and he said the machines that are going to be very expensive, we don't need those right away. We can wait till the second Perkins grant to turn those ones on and get them up and running. I think they still use floppy disks.
Oh my. So to follow up, when is the anticipated timeline for the second Perkins grant?
So we finish writing that in the early summer, and we get awarded that at the end of August.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
fairly quickly.
They want us to buy the equipment for the next year. You know, we're supposed to be buying the equipment and using it for that upcoming year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I'm curious. One of the things that we see at the board are special education expenses, and we do out-of-district placements to other districts, and sometimes we have inbound placements where we accept revenue for that. We get tuition paid to us. So can you do that with CTE? Can we get this program up and running, even if it's, I know Hudson is oversubscribed. Okay, so can we accept Hudson students, even if as inbound tuition? I know we're a regional center, so maybe it doesn't work that way, but the fact is, there's no reason to say until our students get the bug. The fact is, we're a regional CTE center. We're supporting Southern New Hampshire and Hillsborough County. So is there, I mean, have you looked at that, accepting inbound, just to get the program up and running until our own students, like I said, catch the bug?
Absolutely. Because we're a regional center, we pull kids from Milford High School and the surrounding towns, and also from Alverin and the surrounding towns. So, you know, absolutely, we welcome them to come to Nashua and pay their tuition and use our machines.
So there is an inbound, we would accept, that would be an inbound, we would receive revenue in that as an inbound tuition.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's whatever the $13,000 or $14,000 is a student, or what?
I'm not 100% sure.
Dan is already, I could see his brain calculating.
The state has a formula that they come up with, and so we will receive income, but it's clearly defined by the state. It's
Is it
not
that
as high
average
as
daily, that ADM thing?
Well, no, but it's the number of students that come, and it's based on it's only one course, so you don't get the full.
Understood,
You get
okay.
a piece of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Can't thank all of you enough for what you're doing for our kids. Appreciate it, and to have your talent that you're teaching at the community college here is a real help to us, and we thank you for your guidance. And to Mark, thank you. I'm sorry, the man sitting beside you, the 29-year-old, the young one, the young one. But thank you all. This is wonderful. This is something we've wanted for a while. So, and thank you, Ms. Bastoni, for your efforts.
It was Marianne.
Okay.
That's it there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good job, you guys.
Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, the packet did not include the March 18 transfer or financial report. That was left out of the packet.
Okay. We can remove those from the consent agenda. Can we approve the consent agenda with those two items removed? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Let me finish it. Except for the fiscal year March transfer report and the fiscal year 18 March financial report.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have Mr. Mosher? Ms. Van Twyver?
Could we ask her, excuse me, I have to do it myself. I don't know if your mic is on, but oftentimes you can't hear you when on recording.
Oh, it's on.
Could you move it a little closer then, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so can we approve there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with those two items removed? I don't think we need to do a roll call tonight, which is a lot quicker. Okay? Geez, I forgot what you say at this
All those in favor?
favor. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion approved.
Wait, you have to do
Opposed.
the nays.
Any nays? Okay, motion approved unanimously. Is there any communication outside the consent agenda? No? Looks like none. We are now at the public question comment period, which is limited to items on the agenda. Mr. Donovan, can you see if anybody has signed up? I think I saw one person who had signed up. Mr. Sitar?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Sitar. My address is 31 Bedford Street in Nashua. Some of you know me. I used to be a regular here. Some of you are new, and welcome to the board. I'm here to speak tonight briefly about the item at the bottom of the agenda, which is the survey review. Based on the information that was included in the publicly available documentation, this is a review of the competency grading survey that was done 2 years ago. I see Mr. Kaufman's head shaking no. Was there an additional?
Yes.
There was a new survey that was done?
If I may.
Mr.
Yes, the survey that's referred to here is what's known as the Endicott Survey. One was done at the North High School, one was done at the South High School. It was done as part of mostly the preparation for the NEASC accreditation review.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So this is a completely different and separate from the competency grading. That was addressed within the survey.
Okay.
But it's about 146 pages. It's a completely
Gotcha.
different piece of work.
Okay, my
Done by a
apologies.
professional
Based on the
organization.
motion that was at the bottom
Yes.
of that, it looked like
Understood.
this was coming back around. With that, then, I have no further comments. I'll let you guys get back to work.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Mosley, Superintendent Comments.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to start by reading off my computer. So first of all, to the public and to everyone, welcome back. We had a nice break. I'm still waiting to see when it's going to be spring. Tomorrow is May 1st, so we'll see what happens. My understanding, living in New England for a number of years, that it's going to get warmer, so we'll see. A couple things I just wanted to put out to the public, that if you were trying to call central office or try to make some communication within the district, our phone system was down today. No one's fault. We just had some technicalities going on in the district, so that was going on. It's been a busy month. I mean, for April 17th, I attended a cultural connection at the library with the mayor there. Community members came out. We talked about the various programs and opportunities within our schools. It was a nice opportunity to hear, actually Chief LaVoy was there as well, to hear some feedback in terms of what our community members are looking for our schools, and also how we can better interact with our community members, particularly our community members who are first generation, ELL. We were also able to see some of our students actually showcased a nice app that, again, I'm not going to do any justice to this explaining it, but it was an app where they develop it. When you dial like 911, it actually doesn't go to like the 911 to the Nashua Police. It actually goes to a station, and from that station, it actually transfers your call to the 911 station to the Nashua Police. But this one app that they develop actually had the capacity to, once you hit a button, it actually directed you to the Nashua Police. So it's nice for our kids to really be able to showcase that. Board member Timmons was there as well. The mayor was there. I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else that was there. That was nice. On April 23rd, we had the City Academy. That was nice. That was during break. That Monday, coming back from break. Shout out to Haley Sweeney for being there with us as well. Chris Breens was there. Bob Chopa was there. Ray, you were there. And I was there, and we certainly, again, engaged community members that had questions about the schools. They asked us about our programming, asked us about our budget. It was a really nice opportunity for us to sit and talk with our parents. And I say parents, they actually didn't necessarily have kids in the school. There was one young lady that I was speaking to. She had 2 kids who were in the schools, but then she just recently had twins, and she had some concerns about full-day kindergarten, exactly what the schools were going to be, if we're still going to offer it. I said yes. So it was a real opportunity to talk with those individuals. was also nice to talk to young adults, and I would like to say that I used to be like that. And I say that in the sense that we had some nice young adults who had just moved to Nashua, and they said, you know, Nashua has a bad reputation. I said, what do you mean, bad reputation? And we worked through those reputations, Ray. Didn't we kind of work through them? And, you know, I said it was a nice opportunity to talk with them. I'd like to just acknowledge Mr. Hoffman, who recently was the Teacher of the Year ceremony. Congratulations to Mr. Hoffman. I know he's not out there, but I'm sure he's watching. Nice job.
Yeah. Good job, Terry.
There was some information on the Riverfront Landing apartment complex. I think Mr. Hoffman made some requests along that way on enrollment, what that felt and looked like.
Mr. Kaufman.
Kaufman, excuse me. Mr. Kaufman made some, Hoffman, you know, the C's and the F. Sorry about that. Mr. Kaufman made a request for that information, and we'll certainly get that to you. Finally, the climate survey that was out there. You know, we have a draft of that ready to go for the next board meeting. We didn't want to overburden this particular meeting because this meeting was by far pretty compact, so you'll receive that. A couple things I just want to share with you. I know there's been some talk about the retro pay for the teachers and what that feels and looks like. I'd like to start by saying that we're not blaming anyone. We're not saying that it is anyone's fault, but I certainly want to put out to the public that we're going to approach this with mindfulness, prudence, and make sure that we get this right. Part of what has happened since this agreement, we have had a number of negotiations going on district-wide. Understand that our negotiations with the teachers is complete with the TA. We also have negotiations going on with our custodians, negotiations going on with our secretaries, and negotiations going on with our directors as well. We also have negotiations going on with our food service workers. We also have negotiations going on district-wide. In addition to that, we also prepared a 3.4 budget for our community to take a look at, and we certainly want to make sure that everything we do is done with prudence. When we're doing this process, it takes time. We have about 1,000 teachers moving from different steps and years of experience. And we don't want to rush that, and we're not going to rush that. We're not going to rush that in any way. This isn't about $1,000. This isn't about $2,000. This is $2.1 million. $2.1 million that we want to make sure we get right. And if there are mistakes, and they happen to happen all the time, we want to make sure that everyone knows that process in terms of rectifying those mistakes. We have teachers who are job sharing. We have teachers who have taken unpaid leave. We have teachers who are in advancement credits, placements. And yes, as people well know, we have teachers that didn't fall in the new salary scale, and that's about 33 teachers. We want to make sure, and I say we because this is a partnership with the NTU. This is a partnership with the administration. This is a partnership that I want to continue, and it's a partnership that stems on collaboration and information. So moving forward, when there's information that needs to be communicated, certainly we'll make sure that teachers have that information, they have that accurate information. The notifications will go out in a timely manner, but more importantly, the timing of it will be so that everyone's on the same page. In terms of this week was not a feasible week for us to get it done. It wasn't a feasible week for us to get it done because our business manager and HR and our personnel, they were on vacation. They have the right to be on vacation. They have the right to be with their families. This has been a long year for everyone, and I support that. I actually looked at Dan this morning, and for one moment I said, Dan, is that hair I see on your head? He looks like Benjamin Brad. He looks pretty good. And he was smiling at me for a little bit. So thank you, Dan, for taking that long-awaited vacation. Moving forward, we will do this budget process and this salary scale adjustment with a sense of we'll be practical, we'll be mature about it. My door is always open for communication. We'll be mindful of the things that are happening here in this district, mindful that it's an operation that we have 11,000 kids coming in and out of our schools, mindful that we have other negotiations going on, mindful that we're preparing for our budget process, mindful that we're working closely with the mayor to give a presentation next week, and mindful that this is not a me process, but a we process. Finally, I just want to share a little funny story with you. And I think about this Simpson episode and with Homer and Bart, where Homer was skipping work and Bart was skipping school. It's kind of a funny episode, and they see each other, they freeze up, and they go, my wife works in Massachusetts, right? So she has off the first week, the beginning week of break, and then I have off the last week. So I got 3 kids. My daughter's playing lacrosse. My other daughter is playing track. We're like 2 roommates at one point, right? So we're like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a little lunch. We're gonna kind of sit and have a little lunch. So we go to IHOP and we sit there. It's 12 o'clock in the day. So I feel like do people think I'm stealing money from IHOP? Should I be working? Am I on a break? So this was my break. But the funny thing about this story is that we're sitting there, we're eating, and then all of a sudden, a special education classroom walks in from the Fairgrounds Middle School. And the teachers look at me, I look at them, I'm like, they kind of have this thing, and it was a really kind of a surreal moment. I think I was more like Bart than anything. But the point I mentioned that to you is that it was nice to see our kids with our faculty out there. Nice to see our kids and our faculty teaching our special education kids that need those life skills, how to go into a restaurant, how to sit. Things we take for granted all the time, things that we take as commonplace. And they were so patient. They were so nice. How do you order off of a menu? How do you take your food? It was so nice to see that. And again, I just want to say, in coming full circle, in no way, in any way, would I or my administrators or anybody not work with teachers. You do incredible work. Not just the teachers, the custodians, the secretaries, the directors, Dan and Dana. I would say that despite everything that's said, they are there until 7 p.m. every single day to make sure that this district runs. And for that, I thank you. And I'm glad that you took your vacations. I'm glad that you had some time away. I'm glad that you went and you visited your daughter. I'm glad that you actually played some golf, Dan. You needed it. We all need it. And thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the board response to superintendent's comments, and I'd like to remind board members that at this time on the agenda, it is for a response to the superintendent's comments only. So I'll start over here. Ms. Van Pfeiffer?
This is not the time to bring up questions about the information log?
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
No comment.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Superintendent Mosley, 3 weeks ago at our most recent board meeting, you made a passionate plea saying that we can do better. So my remarks tonight directly respond to your plea.
I'm sorry. The comments he made tonight is what you should be responding to.
Okay, so I understand your point, Mrs. Oden, but I couldn't comment last time. I was prevented from commenting on other prepared remarks. I don't know what Dr. Mosley is going to talk about for me to prepare a response ahead of time. So what I've done now is attempt to respond what he said at the last meeting.
Okay.
And you're preventing me from doing so, is that right?
Right, and
Okay.
hopefully...
I appeal the ruling of the chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Would we like to take a vote? I will say I am going to try to end the meeting 15 minutes early so that we can get public comment and board member comments, but I would like to take a vote on for the rest of the members. And quite frankly, I still believe that we should be speaking to what the superintendent said in his comments this evening. So those that have an objection to that, if you raise your hand. Those that have...
Roll call, please.
Okay, we can do a roll call.
Short discussion?
Yeah. I know when you call the question like that, this isn't a motion, so we won't have discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll?
Okay, so a yes vote would be, I'm sorry, I was...
That we can
kind of-
talk about anything we'd want, or a previous meeting, on
A no vote means that your objection stands, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It should
Okay.
be in the positive. It should, if I may, Mrs. Oden.
Mr. Kaufman?
I think the best way to do it is you vote for something as compared to against something. So may I suggest the motion, the motion is to allow Mr. Kaufman to make his comment. And so it's clear to everybody what is exactly we're voting for.
Okay, so a yes vote would allow Mr. Kaufman to continue, and a no vote would not. Mrs. Oden?
Can you say that again, please?
A no vote would not allow Mr. Kaufman to continue.
But he could speak to the superintendent's comments from this evening, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mrs. Oden?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Wait, I'm still confused, I'm sorry. Yes means Mr. Kaufman can speak to whatever he chooses. No means Mr. Kaufman must confine his commentary to tonight's commentary by the superintendent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me on this, I want to be clear.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
Ms. Timmons?
No.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Porter?
No.
So the noes have it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3. So Mr. Kaufman has to confine his comments to what has been said tonight.
Okay. So I will try to stop the meeting at 8:45 so we can have public comment and board member comments. Ms. Hohensee, do you have anything?
So may I make a comment?
No.
The ruling just allowed me to speak on to what was said tonight, right?
Correct. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
So may I speak?
Okay.
Okay, I just want to comment on the board's censorship of me, and I have nothing to discuss tonight.
Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. The administration needs to understand that transparency is good for everyone. The lack of transparency to this board about the NTU contract is disappointing. How can the administration make changes and leave the board out of the loop?
It's not speaking on that.
I think that's out of order.
He was talking about the contract, and I didn't know anything about it till this weekend. I didn't realize that there was a problem until this weekend, because the transparency with this board is seriously lacking. And if those on the board don't value transparency, they've essentially resigned in place. How can they deliberate on issues without transparency? I had more to say, but I cut it short.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Timmons?
No comment.
Ms. Porter? Mr. Guarino?
I want to thank Dr. Mosley for his transparency and for keeping the board informed. We are very much informed. There is not a lack of transparency. It's just not true regarding the teacher's contract. We talked about it. And Dr. Mosley sent us an email, and everything has been out in the open with the board. I just want to make a couple of comments as far as fairgrounds. I just want actually, you didn't talk about that, but they did Alice in Wonderland, so I want to congratulate them on that. So I just broke the rules.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
you're out of order.
I-
Can you
I-
wait
I
until board
apologize.
member comments for that? Thank
Okay, I
you.
apologize. City Academy. I'm just going to say a couple of things on City Academy. I just wanted to say that it's what I learned at City Academy, that it's very important that in our school system, that we maintain quality education in our public schools. Because there were families in the audience, and people vote with their feet, and that's what attracts people to Nashua, to our single-family home neighborhoods, is good quality schools. So that's something I think I learned at the City Academy that was very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you, Mrs. Oden. I just have a couple of brief things. I just wanted to put a plug in for the Cultural Connections Committee. I've been a couple times. I found it a very moving experience. I'm not sure how one gets invited to it, if it's completely open to the public, but if it is, I do encourage people to attend. It's really nice to see how welcoming our community can be, especially towards our immigrant population and our refugee population. And a lot of people, when I have been, have brought their children, and it's great to hear from the kids how school is a really key element in their feeling connected to the rest of the community. So I was very excited to hear that you attended one of those meetings, because they're great. The other thing I wanted to just briefly touch on is the retro pay. I feel like it's very important for us to get this right. I don't want to be in a situation where our teachers aren't getting the pay that they are entitled to under the contract. It needs to be correct, and I think, I'm not sure how long this stuff usually takes, but right now it sounds like we're doing double checking to make sure everybody's at the appropriate step, and I just want to make sure that is resolved in a timely manner, but also accurately. The last thing I want is for our teachers to not be getting the right pay, and heaven forbid, be getting less than they're supposed to be getting. So, thank you.
Okay. I would just like to congratulate Gary Hoffman for being Teacher of the Year. I believe it was the VFW who gave the awards on Liberty Day. And anybody who knows Gary just can catch his enthusiasm for teaching for kids. So congratulations, that was well deserved, and congratulations. I hope you're watching, Gary. Thank you. Okay, student members of the board comments.
So last week I had the pleasure of attending the City Academy presentation on the school district, and that was last Monday. And I have to say it was really interesting for me as a student to hear the community's concerns and what their comments about it. So I have to say I learned a lot, because I'm here, most Mondays I hear everyone else's concerns. Like I enjoy hearing this, and I have to say being able to say some things about the school, like I know I talked about SAT prep and the SAT scores, and then about extracurricular activities. And I have to say our schools have come a long way since I've been in the district, and it was really nice just hearing that the community is getting engaged.
Thank you. Committee on the Budget. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw him. I saw him do that. That's why I knew that. I'm sorry. Second chance? No?
I wish I could have gone to the City Academy, but I was in Florida for vacation.
Oh, you must be really sorry.
Poor guy.
Good for you. Okay, Committee on the Budget.
Mrs. Oden, our work is essentially done until the aldermen approve or disapprove our proposal. If they do not accept it, I imagine the committee will be meeting again to address whatever their concerns might be. Other than that, what is it, next March or whatever, so we're almost on hiatus.
Okay. Committee on Finance and Operations, Mr. Greeno.
Thank you, Madam President. The first item to put before the board is a recommendation to approve the Eagle Scout project for Amherst Street School. I do not see our Eagle Scout here today, but he was at the committee meeting along with Ms. Scarpati, who is the principal at Amherst Street School. This project is a raised garden bed for people who are in wheelchairs. And the Eagle Scout explained that it would be, that he's designing it, and he's going to put it together. He's going to get the finance for it himself, and the principal endorsed the project. So this is a great opportunity to include people who are have handicaps and who are challenged in wheelchairs. And so I'm going to recommend that the board I'd like to make a motion that the board approve the Eagle Scout project for Amherst Street School.
Second.
Okay.
I don't think she. Mrs. Howard seconded.
Okay.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Van Twyver?
Yeah, I just have a question. Is that going to be in the quadrangle at Amherst Street, or where is it going to be put? Does it
Yes,
say?
that's going to be in the quadrant, in the center, the
And
quadrangle.
it's not the same young man that recommended at Charlotte? Is it a different person?
No, that's a different Eagle Scout.
That was a different one. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, I'd like to thank the scouting community out there for nurturing the Eagle Scouts out there. Just so you know, Eagle Scout projects occur before you receive the Eagle Scout Award. So he's not an Eagle Scout yet. His project is to fulfill a service requirement to enable him to receive the award. If there's anything I can do to any wannabe Eagles out there, I'm an Eagle Scout. Please feel free to contact me. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to take a vote on this.
On the motion, Mrs. Oden?
We don't have to do a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries
Unanimously.
Our second item from the Committee on Finance and Operations is a recommendation to approve the 3-year contract with Performance Rehab. I'm hoping that Mr. Donovan can just say a couple of things on this to remind me.
Sure, this is a contract with Performance Rehab. They have been our athletic trainers, working with Lisa Gingras, athletic director now, and previous athletic directors for probably about 15 years now. This is for the last 6 years, they've not had a raise, so they've taken six straight years of keeping their costs the same. This contract is a 3-year contract with a 2% increase, followed by a 3% and then another 3%. Ms. Gingras spoke to this group. They've done a fantastic job. She's thrilled with them. The cost that we pay for 2 athletic trainers is significantly lower than most of the competition.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan.
Ms. Van Twyver?
We usually post the amount of the contract is this more or less than $10,000?
No, it's more than 10,000.
Could you tell me what the total is, please?
Yeah, it's in your package. There's 3 years. The first is 55,328, and
And the total?
I have to add them up, 170,000 or so.
Don't we usually post those in the motions under your committee? 170,000? Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
You mentioned that it's, we met them when we had the conversation about football, and was impressed by what they've done. I'm just curious, I realize they're a long-term vendor, but given the amount and given the level of increase over such a short period of time, was it even considered to put this out competitively?
Well, it's an increase over a 9-year period. Because like I said, for the last 6 years, there's been no increase at all, a zero increase. So I don't consider a 2%, 3%, 3% significant since the last 6 years, it's been zero. And we did, Ms. Gingras did look at other people, and she spoke to other athletic directors, and this is a better deal than anything she did. We did not actually go out for a bid, but we did investigate things.
Did the committee see the
Mr. Kaufman?
the comparative analysis that was performed, or is it just a word of mouth?
Since we did not do a bid, there was not a specific comparative analysis.
Thank
There
you.
was one done the previous 2 years ago.
Okay, any more?
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I appreciate your help, as always.
So the motion is to recommend to approve the 3-year contract with Performance Rehab.
I'd like to move to do that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Nay.
Yes. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4,
7-1.
6, 7, 7 yeas, 1 nay.
7 to 1, the motion carries.
Okay.
Our last item is a recommendation from the Plant's Operations Director to approve energy performance contracting. This was put out to bid, and there is a summary in the handout sheet. And after looking over all the bids, the Plant's Operation Director recommended EEI, that the contract go to energy efficient. So I would like to make a motion to endorse the recommendation of the Plant's Operations Director and award the energy performance contracting to work to EEI.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, so the motion is to recommend to award the energy performance contracting work to EEI. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Is that it for the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, Mr. Guarino?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when is your next meeting? Do you know that?
It's next Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to the Policy on Committee, the Committee on Policy. It was right words, wrong.
Thank you, Mrs. Oden. We have a few policies that we have been working on the last few months. The first is policy BEDG, and that is actually what we've done is we've updated, and we're going to try and rescind the old policy 1132 and combined it with our policy BEDG for efficiency's sake. We've been round and round about this. Basically, the policy is saying that we will continue to keep records of our meetings, and that our meetings will be posted on the school district website within 5 business days following the meeting. So that's that one. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept policy BEDG as revised.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I'm concerned that when we have a hard copy packet, Mr. Mosier receives the information for review. Under this proposal, everything will be the minutes will only be available online. We know that Mr. Mosier does not have access to the website. So how can we keep our board member informed if we pass this policy? The way it's written, I would be voting no.
Would you like me to respond? Okay, sure. Mr. Mosier is a part of the policy committee, and so we discussed this with him. I do wish he was available on the phone today. He is getting the hard copies. He requests them as part of his packet for each board meeting, and he reports that there's no issues with him getting them, and he does not feel that we should have a district-wide policy just for him, that has an accommodation just for him. He felt like this was sufficient for the district, and that as per usual, he can continue to request hard copies. So in deference to his feelings on that, and I happen to agree. So that's where we're at.
Ms. Van Twyver?
I'll be voting against, well, excuse me, I will be voting for this. We've always posted them on the web, and it's not as often as quickly as I would like, but still they are been posted there. And having hard copies for 9 people for all our meetings is just going to be too much. And if there's, we do have Dan who delivers our packets, and if it's something that comes out before the regular Friday, I don't see why we couldn't ask him to drop by Mr. Mosier's home to get whatever is important. Like Friday's email that we got, I don't know whether he got it in time to make a conscientious, read of it and understanding it. So there are times, I think, when it's going to be a little troublesome, but I'm not for putting it on a hard copy.
Okay, Ms. O'Hensey, did you have a hand raised?
Yes, I did, thank you. I also will be voting against it. I don't think it's the time to make this change when we have Mr. Mosier, who's only participating by phone. If we knew when he was coming back, if we had a doctor's note and we knew that he was coming back in 3 weeks, I'd say it was of no consequence, but it could be longer term, and I just think it's not the appropriate time to make this change.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. So the motion is a recommendation to approve policy BEDG minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay. No, I just reread it.
Okay, all right.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against?
Nay.
Nay.
So 7.
I've got it.
6-2.
6-2?
Yep.
Motion carries 6-2.
6-2.
Thank you. The next item is policy 1132, which is the very old policy regarding distribution of minutes. And we have, we've asked to rescind it because we have not been sending them out to the news media. For many years, the news media has been going to our website and reviewing them. They also frequently have someone in attendance. So I make a motion to rescind policy 1132, distribution of minutes, as it is no longer relevant.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do. I just have a question.
Ms.
Do you have
Van Gogh.
exactly how many years this hasn't been followed?
I do not know. Does Mrs. Fitzpatrick, do you know?
I doubt that she probably knows now.
No.
Tara would be the one, but
Yeah, in discussion with Tara and then with Ms. Fitzpatrick, people couldn't remember the last time it was sent out. So I am imagining it's been more than 1 or 2.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone against? The motion passes 8-0. It's unanimous.
Okay. All right, our next policy is policy BDEA, and we have some updates to that policy simply to bring it in line with the language of our other policies on committees. There were not a lot of changes here. So I move that we approve policy BDEA as amended.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Ms. Van Twyver?
Yeah, I'd just like to say these are editorial comments that you don't need to, I don't think that you would have, need to have us approve.
Okay.
But still, it's nice that you're doing it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Mr. Kaufman?
When I attended the committee meeting, this made sense, but when I'm looking at the agenda tonight, I noticed that there's a committee on finance and operations, there's a committee on policy, there's a committee on curriculum, and there's a committee on human resources. So this policy change would be inconsistent with what we currently use here at the board meetings.
Yeah, I think he's right.
So I think maybe more research is needed, because now you'd have to go back and change all the other names of all the other committees to go in line with one outlier rather than, I think you understand my point.
Yep, I do understand your point, and I will say that the issue is the language on the agenda, not the language in the policies. Policy BDE, which is committees and delegates, lists the committees as Curriculum and Evaluation Committee, Policy Committee, Finance and Operations Committee, Budget Committee, Human Resources Committee. And then if we look at the other policies on committees, BDEB is Human Resources Committee, and then Committee on Budget, Committee on Finance and Operations, and Curriculum and Evaluation are all the numbered policies, so those would be in line to be updated to match our policy BDE, which has a list of what the committees are called these days. So we either need to revise that one, or as we're going through the numbered ones, my suggestion is to move it all modern.
Ms. Van Twyver.
So let me understand that there is a policy, a committee policy for each of the other policies that describes what they do, whatever, right? I'm embarrassed to say that I'm not quite up on that, because I would never have approved it thinking as Mr. Kaufman has. So, I mean, that's still, this does say the policy committee. I see no problem with that. As long, I question why you didn't update them all at the same time.
Honestly, because it was my second policy committee that I was chairing, and as I'm looking through all of these, now I'm finding inconsistencies. So my goal is to get everything together.
I think you can understand why a search of our documents that works right is important. Thank you very much.
Completely
for making my
understand
point.
that.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mr. Kaufman.
I understand your explanation, and that too makes sense. So I believe there's a policy that governs the order of agenda. I don't remember which one it is. I forget. So may I suggest the committee in a future meeting revisit that policy to change the names of the committees so you're at least consistent at your presentation here at the board level, on the board agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So the motion is to recommend to approve amended policy BDE, committees and delegates, by changing the first word in the last paragraph from the to any, and changing by 30-minute increments to up to 30 minutes.
No, the
I'm
previous
sorry.
one.
Recommend to approve policy BDEA, policy committee as amended. Sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
Okay, and the next policy that we have been working on at length is policy BDE, committees and delegates, which is the one we were just talking about. We are not touching any of the language for the names of the committees. However, at the bottom of that policy, we have been working on time limits to go along with the time limits for our regular board meetings. In general, we're asking for 90-minute length for our committee meetings, with the exception of the budget committee, which we're saying 3 hours, continuing the 30-minute extension with board approval. The language is almost exactly the same as our regular policy for regular meetings. So I move to approve the amended policy BDE, committee and delegates, by changing the first word in the last paragraph from the to any, and changing by 30-minute increments to up to 30-minute increments.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion. Ms. Van Twyver?
I question the last sentence of this change. It is the responsibility of the superintendent and his or her designee to work with the committee chair to ensure that meetings end with 90 minutes. I do not believe it is either one of their responsibilities. You're taking away the chair's responsibility to manage that meeting. And I believe that the superintendent and his designee may say that, I need so much time, and I think this is a way of trying to limit what could go on the agenda if the chair wishes to put something on there that maybe the administration is not willing to have. So I will be, if that doesn't change, then I'm going to vote against this.
Mr. Kaufman.
Move to amend policy BDE to strike the last sentence on the first page. It is the responsibility of the superintendent or his designee to work with the committee chair to ensure that meetings end within 90 minutes.
Second.
Okay.
Question.
Can you read that back, Mr. Guarino?
The amendment was to move to strike the last sentence of the last paragraph in BDE, which says, "It is the responsibility of the superintendent or his/her designee to work with the committee chair to ensure that meetings end within 90 minutes."
Okay. Dr. Mosley, you had a comment?
The spirit of that is not to, that's not in any way to diminish anyone's power or anything like that. The spirit of that line is to really around the lines of collaboration, to get the documents together, to work in collaboration with the chair. The chair is the one that actually sets the committee, the meeting agenda. And certainly the assistant, in this case it's Donna, works with the chair in that discussion. I think we're, again, getting into this thing around taking over. We don't want to take over anything. We actually want to work in collaboration. We want to make sure that the policies are there that we're examining, but also it's done in a timely manner where we can get some information completed. So in no way was that written to diminish the chair's power. In this case, it would be a board member. The board member is ultimately responsible. It has the authority to continue the meeting or not.
Thank you. Mr. Guarino.
Yeah, if you read the sentence closely, the responsibility is to work with the committee chair to ensure that the meetings end. It's not to ensure that the meetings end. So the committee still has the power, and I agree with what Dr. Mosley said. I don't really have a problem with that sentence.
Okay. Ms. O'Hensi.
Thank you. I will be supporting this because I think if we took it out, it could be anybody that's in the meeting that raises their hand, gets the floor, and points to the clock and says, we are at that time limit. I don't think it has to be the superintendent. It could be Mrs. Raymond. It could be any member of our board. So I don't think it diminishes anybody. I don't think it aggrandizes anybody to just remove it. We can still work collaboratively. There's no harm done.
Ms. Van Twyver.
I'm going to reiterate that it is the chairman's responsibility to set the agenda, and I would assume that a good chairman would talk with the designee or the superintendent to find out if these topics were going to take a long time, or whether I could add a third or fourth topic to the agenda. And I have a request pending into the assistant superintendent regarding the next meeting, whether he can add another topic, and I have not received an answer to that. So there is an example, sir, of how it could be changed. So I will not vote for it. I will vote for this amendment.
Call the question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Call the question.
Okay, on the amendment, a yes vote would amend the policy to strike the last sentence.
Excuse me, point of order. You have to vote on the call.
Call.
I was just going to read it, that's all.
No, you have to vote on
You have to vote
Mrs.
on the
Raymond's
call.
motion.
I apologize.
Yep.
I apologize. I thought everybody was in agreement with calling the question. Okay, voting to call the question, a yes would end the debate, and a no would keep the debate going. Okay, on the motion to call the question, Ms. Oden?
It doesn't have to be roll
It
call.
doesn't have to be roll. All in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So now we'll take the, we'll vote on the amendment, correct?
Of order? I don't think
Yeah.
I heard everybody vote.
Let's do a roll call, please.
What do you, should we do a roll call, Madam
I
Madam
didn't
President?
hear-
You are the president
Hear
of the
anybody
board, so I'm
say
going to
nay.
take direction.
That's right, because I was confused,
Oh,
Okay,
and now I'm still confused.
okay. The-
And I call, and it,
Can you read the amendment again?
no.
No, no,
it's
no,
not
this
called
is
the
just to
motion.
call the
Call the
question.
motion.
End debate.
Okay,
So
end
a
debate,
yes vote would end debate,
yes,
and a no vote, we would
continue.
we would continue. So, Ms. Oden,
Yes,
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver.
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Okay, now I can take a vote on the amendment, okay?
No, actually, it's still open for discussion and,
Ms.
oh, I'm sorry, you called
Ms.
the question.
Madam
I'm sorry.
President.
My
Madam
mistake,
President.
my mistake.
okay.
Okay.
We can vote on the amendment, sorry.
Okay, so a yes vote would move to amend the policy to strike the last sentence. Okay, Ms. Oden,
No,
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
No.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver.
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes no. Ms. Porter?
No.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4 noes and 4 yeses. So,
motion
Lost.
fails.
so the motion does not, the motion fails, it's not amended.
Now we want to call the main motion.
Excuse me, I
Oh.
would like to comment on the main motion, if I may.
Yes,
Thank you. So I've opposed this red line, this red text since the beginning. I opposed it when it dealt with the board. I oppose it now with the committees. Tonight is a good example of managing a meeting, not by the nature of the needed discussion, but managing it by time. And if we manage our meetings just so we're getting out of here at a specific time, we're not doing the public the service they've elected us to do. Our job is to deal with the issues that come before the board. We have an ideal time, and we try to maintain, we don't want to be here all night, but at the same time, arbitrary limits obviously limit discussion, and I think it's against the best interests of the school district to adopt this change. I will be voting no.
Ms.
I would
Timmons?
be voting yes for the change because we do need to limit our time. Our meetings are going too long, they're not advantageous, and the public doesn't really get anything out of it but just verbiage. And if we get to the business of handling what we need to do when we come here, then we can get our minutes together, get our questions answered without long discussions. We will be able to get out here in a reasonable time, and our public would not be able to watch us instead of strolling through at least an hour and a half of the minutes just to get to a certain point. So that's my comment.
Ms. Hohensie?
I will not be supporting this. We had an HR meeting just recently. It was 2 hours, and it ended in 55 minutes. The chair was browbeating us to end before we even started. So it's certainly not needed in order to shorten meetings. I can't support it.
Ms. Timmons?
I want to, it's funny, our human resources meeting consists of the board, and they were there, and we were done, and anyone else that was not on that committee had a chance to respond and was asked questions, and they were given the opportunity to participate in the board, even though they was not on the committee. And the committee went as long as it needed to go. So, and that's my question. We don't need to be here a whole hour and a half if we didn't need an hour and a half.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond?
Can I suggest that if we feel the need to discuss this at length, that we send it back to the policy committee instead of spending the main board meeting trying to reword policies? because I don't think it does us good to spend this time on this when we have a policy meeting that we could be spending on it. So,
Mr. Guarino?
I'd like to move the question.
I had my hand up before he did, but that's quite all right. Call the question.
Okay. Call the question. Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
yes. Sorry, yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
So we have 3 noes and 5 yeses. So now I can take a vote on the policy. Sorry. On the policy, Mrs. Oden.
I'll read it again.
Okay.
Recommend to approve the amended policy BDE, committees and delegates, by changing the first word in the last paragraph from the to any, and changing by 30-minute increments up to 30-minute increments.
Okay, on the motion, Mrs. Oden?
I don't think we need a roll call.
Wait, I'm confused. Are we voting on the main motion or the amendment?
The amendment already failed.
The amendment failed.
Amendment failed, so
We're
now it
voting
is
on
the
the
main-
main motion.
Right.
So we're now voting on the policy as presented to us
Yes.
tonight.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
There are 3 noes and 5 yeses. The motion carries.
5-3.
5-3.
Okay. The next policy is policy GBL. This is a new policy. It has been here before. We had to send it back to the policy committee for formatting. So there's really, it's all red because it's new, but there's nothing that hasn't been presented to the board. So I make a motion that we approve policy GBL as amended so that the format is in compliance with the other policies, and correct the placement of an apostrophe in the second paragraph.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion? Did you want to speak to your motion?
No, I think we have discussed this at more than one policy committee. This was suggested by a board member. We've gone round and round on the language, and I think it's at a place where we can move forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kaufman?
I just want to point out there's another typo in there.
I think it's crossed out.
No,
Oh,
it
it's
says,
INGE.
so in that same paragraph where you were, oh, you're right, it is,
Crossed out.
it is, well,
No, not in mine, it's not crossed out.
well, it looks,
Excuse me,
it's
one
not
at a
clear
time,
if that
please.
E in the word, it's intended to be ensuring.
Yep.
There's an extra E there. I
On-
don't know if it's that deleted or not. It could be struck through, it might not. It's just an editorial.
Yeah. So on mine, I can see with my super glasses that it is struck through, but I agree that it's challenging to read.
But wasn't this change just put in? It's blue, it's not red.
No,
So why wasn't that corrected before it hit us? I don't understand. It's a bit minor thing, but let's just get it out of the E.
I agree, and I was trying to find the last one. This was not a typo on the last one, so I don't know where that came from. So,
Editorial, so.
Anybody else? Did I see a hand over there?
No.
Okay. So the motion is to recommend to approve policy GBL as amended to format it to be in compliance with other policies and correct the placement of the apostrophe in the second paragraph as noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 8-0. Unanimous. Okay.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. One other issue, just to take note of, we did start our review of our weapons policy. It is not in line with current state law. We've agreed to schedule a work session to further that. I do not have an update on scheduling the work session. Our next policy meeting will be on the 15th at 6 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation?
Madam President, I have a question about in policy.
Yes.
We never rescinded 8201 when we passed GCF back on April 13th, 2015. Could we just do a perfunctory delete that? Because I looked in the motions and it wasn't there.
Okay.
It's a housekeeping thing.
Oh, okay, absolutely.
Move to rescind policy 8201, administrative and supervising vacancies.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I'm sorry, what was it replaced by?
It was replaced by GCF.
GCO, thank you.
I never got a board packet of all the different policies, so I copied them all down. So I had that policy from the online version, and somehow it disappeared without ever being rescinded. So I just want
Okay.
to formally rescind it and get it over with.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay, no, motion passes unanimously. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation, Ms. Van Twyver.
Thank you, Madam President. We haven't met since the last time, and we're going to be meeting on the 15th, that's policy, May 21st.
Okay. Thank you.
6 o'clock,
Okay.
in this room.
Committee on Human Resources, Ms. Timmons.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I move to approve the recommendation to approve administrative recommendation of Richard Borman.
Excuse me? I'm sorry. We have two meetings going on. Okay, thank you.
Yes, mine wasn't that important. Okay, recommendation to approve administrative recommendation of Richard Borman, the principal at Mount Pleasant Elementary from 2018-19 school year at an annual salary of $94,625.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, discussion? Ms. O'Hensy?
I will very strongly support Mr. Broadman for principal of Pleasant Street Elementary School. He was very professional. His understanding of why students leave district schools for charter schools will be very helpful to the district. We can attempt to address any problems we might have within the district that encourage kids to stay in our district, which, as he mentioned, range from anywhere from bullying to other negative experiences. So I think he'll be a very big asset to our district.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Twyver?
You know, I agree with Ms. O'Hensy. I watched I reviewed the meeting, and his experiences in a special school and elementary, and I think there was another school that was that he had, that he brings a lot to that thing, and Mount Pleasant certainly is going to be blessed, I think, to have him.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All in favor to recommend to approve administrative recommendation of Richard Boardman, principal, Mount Pleasant Elementary School for the 2018-19 school year at an annual salary of $94,625. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes unanimously, 8-0.
Secondly, I'd like to recommend to approve the 2018-19 teacher principal renomination list dated April 30th, and the principals list that was given to us early in today's meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion?
That was what we approved at the meeting before this?
Mm-hmm.
Turn the rules.
Thank you. No, don't worry.
Mr. Kaufman?
Shouldn't there be two motions? One that it was on the agenda and we're approving, and then the item that was just brought forward from HR just be treated separately? That's just an inquiry.
I believe they went through as one motion.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver?
Didn't we have a list of recommendations? Are you normal personnel recommendations?
Yes, we did.
Wasn't that in our packet?
No, it wasn't.
One of them was.
No, I
Yeah, that was
received
in our
one in my
packet.
packet, and then
Yes,
one
you-
tonight
you-
when I arrived.
You have it.
So do we need to approve that or not?
That's what
Yes,
the
we
vote
do.
is.
We're not done.
No, it's a separate vote.
Oh, okay, you're ready to do that, all right,
We
sorry
need
about
to,
that.
okay, but we also need to do the approval on the 2018-19 teachers principal renomination list. We just did, we didn't get that approval yet.
We need to vote.
Okay, we need to
vote.
vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 8-0.
Finally, we had the personnel recommendation approved by the Human Resources Committee on April 18, 2018. I move to approve that personnel recommendation list.
Okay,
Second.
okay, any discussion? Okay, so the motion is to approve the personnel recommendations approved by the Human Resources Committee on April 18, 2018. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 8-0.
Our next meeting for the Human Resources Committee is on May 23rd from 5:30 to 7:30 at Nashua North.
Okay, thank you. It is now 5 minutes of 9. As I said, I would like to have 15 minutes at the end. We still have some business to do, so I'm looking to see if we can get a motion to extend the meeting 30 minutes, as we did have a presentation in the beginning.
Point of order, we didn't start till 7:17,
Oh, that's right. So,
Right.
so that too took up time. So,
so we don't have to make the motion till 12 after.
oh, okay. Well, I might forget that, so everybody keep their eye on it. Okay, thank you. Okay?
Madam President?
Yes.
I want a clarification. At the HR meeting, and I've got the minutes in front of me, there was a statement made that was quite confusing, and we didn't take it up at the time, but I would just like to read it for clarification from the board. The chair was saying that we have to limit this to one question and a follow-up. Is this question a follow-up to what the candidate just said? We have interviewed and had 2 rounds of interviews. This is not an interview for the position he is selected. So my understanding, when you go to an interview, he hasn't been selected. He's the nominee, and we're interviewing him, and then the board, the committee first, and then the board as a whole makes the election. So I just want clarification on that, because I didn't want to challenge the chair during committee.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver.
And another point that I want to make is that I've never been limited to 2 questions to interview somebody. So I think that's improper, trying to impose that upon us. If I had been there, I would have had a lot of questions to ask the gentleman, and I tend to, I would, if he was here tonight, I would have done the same thing.
Madam President, and she would have been allowed to because she is on the HR committee.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman.
So that somehow suggests, in committees, we all have the same rights. The only difference is the final vote. So are you suggesting that committee members have the ability to ask additional questions that another board member who's just attending the meeting does not have?
If you was on the committee, you would have a right to answer the questions according to Robert rules, as many as you like, according to the chair. I don't have the rules right in front of me right this minute, but you were given the privilege of asking a question. You asked more than one. You asked 2 and a follow-up. Mrs. Ho-Hensey asked questions. We had a limited time to ask questions. You 2 asked more questions than anyone, and you were given that ability to do so, and you was not on the committee, and you interrupted the chair.
Ms. Van Twyver.
I would like you to bring to the meeting next time the parliamentary law that says what you have just said, that non-committee members cannot ask questions but 2. I'd like to see that, because that is not true.
Okay.
You cannot limit a person from asking questions, and there was plenty enough time. Your meeting stopped early. I'm just saying.
They don't dictate my time. I dictate the time. They were a guest in the Human Resources Committee. If they wanted to be on that committee, then they shouldn't have quit the committee.
Madam
Excuse
President.
me. Let's not get into this, please.
Excuse me, Madam President. If the public is at the meeting, are they not allowed to ask questions? If the public, believe me, I'm sure that these people sitting out here would be offended if they couldn't ask questions, so.
Well, I wasn't talking about the public. I was talking about board members. Get that straight.
please. Mr. Guarino.
Yeah, I would suggest that if board members who are on committees would like to participate in committees, they don't quit on spite, okay?
Please.
That's point number one. Okay, point number two, each person, board member that goes to our committee meetings needs to respect the chairperson, okay? Show some respect. Do not badger the chairperson, okay? And then don't come here and say this, that you're the victim, because it's just not true, okay? And we need to behave like a team. We're all on the same side, okay? And the person who chairs these committees is in charge of the committee. They're trying to keep order, one person to speak at a time. And I would suggest that the chairperson of the Human Resources Committee has been more than generous in allowing time for people who are not on the committee to ask questions. Just look at the videotape, okay? That's all I have to say. And let's try to calm down and be nice to each other and respect the chair. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. Ms. Van Twyver.
I don't know what to say to you, Mr. You're saying that board members, we were interviewing a person for the job, and you're saying that we can't ask questions of, yes, well, sir, you have no right. We've always had the opportunity to ask as many questions as we like. In fact, we used to have a round table of questions that we were proposed. And I think if you go back and look at some of the interviews that we did as a board to the ones that were authorized to interview, you will see that we had questions. Even with Dr. Mosley, we had questions that we all asked, and we went around as many times. So I think it's very disingenuous to the person that's being interviewed to say, you can't ask me a question, because you certainly don't want me to call him up and ask him personally, I don't think. I think I'd probably be told I couldn't do that. So I think you need to look at some of those tapes, because I have never been told I could not ask as many questions as I need to know to find out about the person. Now, this man is excellent. He's going to be a very good person, but it's not fair to the board members that are in attendance. They come because they're interested in knowing about what their background is. And you can sit there and shake your head, but I'm sorry, sir, review some of the tapes.
Madam President.
Just Ms. Hohensee and then Ms. Timmons.
Thank you. I wasn't bringing this up to play the role of the victim. I asked my one question. I was done. I am not complaining about that. What I want clarification to the chair is the remarks that when she stated that this is not an interview for the position, he has been selected. I just don't want that confusion in front of another candidate again. I would like clarification from the president of the board to what should have been said or what shouldn't be said in that context.
I believe the superintendent nominates.
Correct.
Mhm.
But she said that this is not an interview when it was listed on the agenda as an interview, and he's been selected, like as if we can just stop now. He's already been selected.
Well, he's nominated by the superintendent, so he had gone through the interview process and had been the top candidate.
The nominee.
Mhm.
But we still had the interview, and we still had 2 votes to elect that candidate for our principal. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that as a board member, prior to that meeting, I asked for the reference letters of that candidate, and they were not provided by the administration. And I still haven't seen them. And to conduct an interview involves doing research. And part of that research, part of the application process, it's required by the application process. I think it's called AppleTrack, if I get the name right, something close to that. And part of that is you have to complete an application and you have to provide at least 3 references. And those references were not provided. I asked for them, I didn't get them. That's denying us information to do our jobs. That's hindrance. It's wrong.
Can I just say, as somebody who spent quite a bit of time on the Human Resources Committee, the interview teams see those. I think we have to look at the policy, because I don't think that letters of reference that have names, telephone numbers, email addresses should be public. I think if board members want to go in and look at resumes, they should be able to go into the office and read them, but I don't think those should be out. I know the interview teams that I've been on, all of the resumes have been taken back by Human Resources and shredded. So I have concerns about that, because I think a lot of that information is personal. Ms. Van Twyver, then I'll go back to Mr. Kaufman.
I have 2 points to make. Number one, we were not informed that these new people have been interviewed or started an interview process. So there's no way of knowing that we time to go in and ask for those things, okay? So that's wrong. Even on the committee, I was not told that these interviews were going on. So number two, when I was policy chair, we had a big, long discussion about HR and the process, very detailed, and now that's why we have the policy that we do. And at that time, Mrs. Oden, I suggested that a procedure be written down so that we all understand how the interview process works. Now, whether you want to keep it as a administrative policy that we can review, or it's made as a policy from the policy committee, I don't care. But I have forgotten. I've always had an opportunity to do a lot of questions, and it used to always come to the HR committee or to the board so that we could ask these questions. I think that policy, whether it's a procedure on the administration and I asked for that from the HR committee, and that never happened. So I would like to see that does get done now, because then it would preclude this kind of conversation that we're having tonight.
Madam President,
Ms.
in
Timmons.
front of me, I have 3 policies.
Mrs. Oden, point of order.
She wasn't recognized.
I thought she did just recognize me.
The chair indicated that I would be next.
Point of order, point of
Okay.
order, she pointed at her.
Excuse me. Ms. Timmons had her hand up, and I called on Ms. Van Twyver.
And you said
Ms.
I would
Timmons,
be next.
I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Can you grant me that? Thank you.
After cutting me off earlier tonight, I have to respectfully decline. Point of privilege, you acknowledged I would have the floor next. I ask that you live up to your word.
I
Ms.
think
Timmons.
this would clear up a lot of things. I have the policies in front of me.
Thank you.
So, and all I was going to do is say I do have policy BDEB. There's copies for everyone, GCFA and GCF. They can have a copy of this, and then it should end this discussion for tonight, and then we could take it up again in HR committee meeting. But I will pass a copy around.
Okay, if you just
Sure.
pass it around.
Pardon me?
Sorry. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. In your comments, you said that the resumes, we could go into the office and look at them. The resume was distributed to us as part of the packet. So that was readily made available to board members prior to that interview.
Right.
My question had to do with and I would argue there's more personal information. Thank you. There's more personal information on a resume, usually their name, their address, their phone number, email address. So we are receiving that. My question was for the letters of reference, not the resume. We did receive that, just for clarification. And I think that's part of what we should be able to look at if we're conducting an interview. And it was posted, and I attended an interview, and apparently it really wasn't. Thank you.
So Gary, do you want to say anything to clear anything up?
I would like to read the statement in policy GCF. Board members may request to review copies of resumes and credentials of all candidates. Credentials are transcripts and certifications. They are not letters of references. We have to my recollection, never provided letters of references to the board when they're interviewing the superintendent's nominee.
Madam Chair.
Dr. Mosley.
First of all, thank you, Ms. O'Gara, for reading that. Certainly, we will adhere to that policy. And what is being supplied to our board members in terms of credentials for our potential candidates is appropriate. If you're watching out there and you're interested in applying to the Nashua Public Schools, we will keep your data, we will keep your information safe. We will follow the law to make sure that everything is held in confidentiality in terms of your candidacy, whether you are selected for the position or not. The second thing to this is that we will continue to follow policy, and board members would not be calling central office and directing central office administrators or anyone in the district to do their work. That's against our policy, and it's going to stop. Now, moving forward with our meeting, it's now, Madam Chair, it's about 5 minutes to the end. I think it's 17 or something. I think we're a little bit behind, so I think we have to take some type of vote to continue on.
I think Ms. Hohensie said 9:12 because we went.
Correct.
So we have a couple more minutes before we take that vote, and we still have some business in front of us.
Point of order, Mrs. Odom.
What is it, Mr. Kaufman?
I just want to make an observation that the unfinished business listed item that's listed next, the last day of school, is not, in fact, was not prior on an agenda. And in fact, the items that follow it were on last meeting's agenda that was truncated and never discussed. So I'm concerned, if I recall the policy correctly, that we will only discuss the next item on the agenda for that extension of 30 minutes, which would therefore mean, if I'm understanding correctly, that the things that I brought up at the last meeting, when the meeting was truncated, would be truncated again. And I find that quite objectionable. So the first thing is I move to make the last day of school for staff, move it to new business where it rightly belongs.
Second.
As president of the board, I have the ability to move things around on the agenda. I can take a vote for concurrence of the board, but I would like to leave the last day of school for staff, June 22nd or 25th, under unfinished business and deal with that so that we can let our staff know what's going to happen on June 25th. So I'm sorry, but that's my prerogative as president of the board.
Understand. So may I get your assurance that these items that were left over from the last meeting will be discussed tonight? And if I need to request a vote from the board for that, I would so move.
Discussion.
Ms. Raymond.
Thank you. I just would like to point out, because I carry my binder, that we did discuss the last day of school during the last regular board meeting on April 9th. I have a note. It says the item on the agenda was last day of school, bargaining units reaction, June 22nd or June 25th. And we had a brief discussion where the last day of school for students was currently 6/22. Last day for staff, forthcoming. So that's...
Thank you for the clarification.
That's the note I made to myself so that I could remember for this time. So.
Okay. I would like, at this point, to take a vote to extend the meeting 30 minutes. I'm looking for a motion.
Don't move. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we have until about 9:43, 9:44. Okay. So we are
Madam Chair.
on liaison reports.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
What is it, Mr. Kaufman?
I thought we were going to, Oh, we didn't move to, okay. So I had asked and received a second asking for assurance that my items would be discussed tonight. So we have a second on the floor. That has not been
Point of order, I didn't hear
discussed.
any second.
Oh,
There was no second.
Excuse me,
I
point
will
of order.
second.
Okay. There are other things that I think need to be addressed, so.
I'm not
I
suggesting to
don't-
change the order that you
I don't
have
s-
identified, but I am asking that since these items were on the previous agenda for a truncated meeting, that.
I understand what you're asking, but there's new business that needs to get addressed before those are addressed, and they shouldn't
But the
take
rules,
long.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, the rules of Robert's Rules says that unfinished, things that were on an agenda at a prior meeting have priority
Yes.
at the next meeting.
Mhm.
And this is the second time these have been on here
But-
and still not discussed. Are you
And I
suggesting you're going to
understand that.
skip over it again?
Yes, I might, to get to other business. As president, I have to do.
Censorship, Madam Chair. I
have
really
to do
regret
what's
what you're
best.
doing.
I have to do what's best for the board and for our district.
Allowing discussion is what's best for the board, Madam Chair.
Liaison reports,
No report at this moment, at this time.
okay. And I'm going to skip quickly down to Board of Ed committee reassignments under new business, because I want to make sure those people can participate.
I don't have that.
There wasn't
No,
in the
I
packet.
have, oh, good Lord, I do have them. While I'm looking for that, why don't we go to the last day of school for staff under unfinished business? Dr. Mosley, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. A couple things. We have outlined the last day of school for our kids to be that 22nd. We're looking for that to be a half day for our students. Our teachers and our we have contracts that pay teachers 180 days. On that Friday, that gives us 179 days. The 180th day would be on that Monday. There is some discussion around waiving that day, what people want to do. There is some hourly employees that we have in the district that we are, there was some discussion around providing them an opportunity to make up that time. There's been some past practice around the what's happened in the past around waiving the day. The superintendent does have the authority to waive the day with the support of the board. So, I looking for the board to kind of give me some direction on this. It's something that I think people have been discussing. In the contract, it reads for the teachers, pupil days. So it is the pupil, the students in front of them, days that they would be compensated because the students are in front of them. Because the students are out on that Friday, they're not going to be in front of them, the teachers. It's a little technicality, but it's something to consider. There are, opportunities that our hourly employees would not have an opportunity to work on that Monday, which means that the district would have to compensate them in some way. I don't think it's appropriate for our kids to come back that one day. I think they need to transition, and certainly we don't want to penalize the kids over, the teacher contract. I don't want to in any way make sure that our kids are are safe, and their parents know that June 22nd is our last day, and so the board needs to kind of give me some direction around what they're thinking about for this, this Monday.
Ms. O'Hensi.
Thank you. I thought that the presentation we had previously on safety, police safety in our school, was a very important opportunity for professional development.
Yeah.
It could not only be the teachers, but it could be the auxiliary staff as well. Then there wouldn't be any confusion as to who is paid, who's not. And I think the training would benefit the district as a whole. I think that I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. And I thought that would be an easy way to end the year.
So, you know, and I have been in discussion with the NTU on this, and to make sure that it's all coordinated and we're not in violation of the contract, we're looking to do that on that Friday. So that Friday will be a half day for the kids. The 22nd will be a half day for the kids, and we could potentially facilitate that training in the afternoon for the last day for our faculty.
Follow up?
Sure.
Could you just clarify? I don't understand. So Monday, you're saying unless there's students in the building, they can't work?
That's what the contract reads as pupil days. So what happened last year is that the board waived that, those last 2 days, because, you know, you just kind of waived it. I'm not going to get into last year, but essentially, yes. So, you know, what I have tentatively have done is working in thank you, police, by the way, if you're watching, for having some flexibility in terms of making sure that we have this training, but, you know, in discussions with the NTU, you know, there's you know, we just want to make sure we follow that contract, which I'm comfortable with, and so we have, you know, the opportunity to do the training on that Friday.
So there's no makeup days or anything? You couldn't be used for makeup for certain students on that Monday? There's no valid reason for having students in the building, even for makeup?
I think that would be a little bit of a challenge that Monday for kids to do
Okay,
I don't know what they would be making up. By then, the grades are closed. There's
Okay.
you know, even if we had, I'm just going to kind of put a number out, even if we had 100 students show up here at the North, that doesn't mean that every single teacher would have a student in front of him or her.
Okay, I just didn't know if that qualified to resolve the contractual glitch.
Anybody else? Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. So I'm concerned if we choose to waive the 25th for staff so that everyone can go home after the training on the 22nd that appears to be tentatively scheduled, what assurances do we have and what assurances do staff have, especially our hourly staff, that they're not going to lose money because of our action? Because I think it's important that they get the contractually, you know, contractually required pay, but also our hourly staff, it seems unfair for them to lose a day of pay. I know that would be challenging for, you know, many, many families. So.
May I respond?
Sure.
If you waive the day, we would just pay them.
Mr. Kaufman?
So how does that impact, so every employee would get an extra day off? What happens with the bus contract?
Whatever happened last year, we would follow what happened with the last 2 days that were waived last year. So the board last year waived 2 days. How that was facilitated, we would follow that same procedure.
Do you have a
Dan.
follow-up, Mr. Kaufman?
It would have no effect on the bus contract.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Last year was considered an extraordinary circumstance, and I hate to institutionalize it the next year, because using it as the reason, because we did it last year, that becomes the reason next year, and then our students are still losing a day of school. And I'm puzzled in a sense, because when we were discussing closing the school, ending the school year earlier for our students, the whole emphasis had to do with our students are getting out early so the staff could have professional development. So, and that was going to be 5 days of professional development, if I recall the proposal correctly. So it seems to me that there's still a leftover need. If you can only deliver a half a day on the Friday, I've got to believe when you previously wanted to give 5 days of professional development, that there's still plenty of topics that could be discussed and dealt with on that Monday. We've already decided, I thought, that the students' last day was the 22nd. So I think parents can plan for that, right? So I don't think there's any doubt about bringing them back. At least in my mind, we resolved that already. So I would argue if there was a 5-day need for professional development before, then that Monday could certainly present an opportunity for the staff to work that day, get professional development as teachers, paras, whomever, and then the hourly workers would come to work and do whatever they do. Thank you.
Dr. Mosley, I would like to ask if this day is waived, that we not consider it as past practice. That's 2 years in a row. So I would ask that you confer with the union and state that this will not be considered as past practice. And I would hope you would sit down with the union and see if we might be able to work out an hours-based calendar so that we don't run into this problem next year.
I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Kaufman.
I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but in my mind, the teacher's contract is structured around days. If I'm correct, and I don't have a legal opinion on this, to go from a daily calculated school year to an hourly calculated school year, in my opinion, would probably require a change of the contract. So
Yes, it would, and that's why I asked them to work with the union, and they could maybe have a sidebar. I think there needs to be some collaboration, Mr. Kaufman. I think you're right.
Okay, have fun with that.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, we're looking for a motion to waive the 180th day? Is that where we're at?
With the
Mrs.
caveat
Logan?
of me engaging the union to come up with a creative way to
Use hours.
use the hours in some ways. And I guess the hour thing, and maybe I'll just kind of qualify what was going on with the first proposal. It wasn't necessarily, the hours can work its way out for the teachers in terms of the contract. So if it's 180 days, right? We do 180 days, and we would have to look and engage in that dialogue around students, pupil days. And, from what the feedback I've gotten from the faculty and from principals, professional development is paramount. So how do we fit that in? And I think there's an opportunity to do that if you look at the contract per pupil day. So in the contract, I'm just going at the top of my head, we have 2 days in which we can have like the students aren't in front of the teachers, but that's all we get for that particular year. So if we were able to engage in that conversation with the teachers, with the pupil versus just professional days, I think that's a discussion. I think we also have to talk a little bit about our other bargaining units, particularly our hourly ones, because that's where we run into problems. Because if we did, it's kind of a ripple effect. It's like once you go with the professional development with the teachers, let's just say you have, the teachers are already paid 180 days, but our food service is not paid 180 days. They're paid hourly. So they wouldn't necessarily have 180 days to work. So are they okay with that? And that's a discussion we would have to have. Our paraprofessionals are hourly, is that correct? So they wouldn't have an opportunity to work. However, they would definitely benefit from our professional development, particularly around social emotional learning. We have Fontes Pinellas, our current curriculum. So there's an opportunity on a lot of fronts. I believe that we just have to think creatively, and at some point I'd say have these discussions during the summer as opposed to trying to have them now. But it's a challenge, and I think this was an unusual year. If you told me that we were going to have 2 significant snowstorms in the middle of March, who would have thought of that? So
it's not unreasonable, it's not unreasonable, but it's certainly something where I think it's important to have some discussions. I think, Madam President's suggestion is a proactive one, that we can start having, in August as opposed to March.
Ms. Porter?
So if we were to waive the 25th, are we in compliance with all the contracts of all the bargaining units?
I'm sorry?
If we were to waive that last day, the 25th, are we in compliance with all of our contracts?
Yes, we'd have to pay all of our bargaining units
And
for
we
that
would
day.
be able to do that?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Thank you. Mr. Donovan, I'd like to ask you, what would be the daily cost for doing that? For all bargaining units, all employees, whatever?
I'd have to get that number for you. I wasn't prepared to answer that question tonight.
Well, I'm not going to vote for anything that I don't know how much I'm giving away. Thank you.
Dr. Mosley?
I won't talk anymore. I've been talking to
Okay. Anybody have a motion?
I have a motion.
Heather?
I think Mrs. Hohensee, I could see her raise her hand
Okay,
before I
well,
did.
I was looking at you. Okay.
Out of respect for Mrs. Van Twyver, I move to table it till we have the cost.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Donovan, will you have that for us by the next board meeting in a few weeks? Because I really am hesitant to wait until June to give an answer to our employees.
Yeah, no, I can have that by the next meeting, definitely. I can probably have it in a couple of days, but I'm working on something else right now.
Will that be sufficient notice, I guess would be my other question.
That would be in the first week, that would be the May meeting.
Yeah.
The first May meeting, so I think that's, I want to say I'm just counting back, I think the 7th? The 7th, is it? The 6th? I don't know.
Hold on. The 14th. So that's a little bit more than a month's notice.
Do you want a motion? Ms. Van Twyver?
I would also suggest that the superintendent start talking with the thing about the hourly.
NTU.
With the NTU, whatever you're called anymore, I don't know.
Okay. So is there a motion to table?
Yes, Mrs. Hohensee made a motion and it was seconded.
Is seconded? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 8-0. I'm going to skip down to committee assignments so that the committees can function. First, Mr. Guarino will fill the seat on the policy committee vacated by the resignation of Mr. Kaufman. Henceforth, Ms. Porter will fill the seat as alternate on the curriculum and evaluation committee vacated by Mr. Guarino. Are there any objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, sorry.
No? Motion passes, or it's not a motion, but that's approved. Ms. Timmons will fill the seat held by Mr. Mosier on the AFSCME Negotiations Committee. Henceforth, Mr. Mosier will be the alternate on that committee. Are there any objections? You have an objection?
Yes, I think the responsibilities for contract negotiation should not fall on one person, especially someone who's new to the board.
We're not debating that now.
You asked me if there was an objection. I'm answering your question.
No, I'm asking you if there's an objection to Ms. Timmons filling the seat and
I'm explaining.
And Mr. Mosier becoming the alternate.
And I said yes, yes, I have an objection, and I was explaining my reason.
But you're explaining it in the fact that you think there should be more people on that
Yes.
committee, and that's not what I'm asking. I'm sorry.
I have a question.
So I'd like to take a vote on this.
May I ask a
Are there
question?
any objections? Do you have an objection?
I have a
This is not about discussion, this is about objections. I'm just trying to get committee assignments done.
I object if he didn't attend today's bargaining unit negotiations meeting. If he can't attend, he shouldn't be on there. So I don't know if he attended. My question was, did he attend today?
Ms. Timmons, were you
Oh,
there?
Yes, I was there.
Okay.
I've been at every single one of them.
Okay.
Did Bill Mosher attend?
No, he was not there.
Okay. So, I'm looking for a vote.
Roll call?
You'd like a roll call. Okay, roll call vote on that, Mr. Guarino.
Mrs. Oden?
You know what? There doesn't need to be a roll call because it's not a motion.
Okay.
So, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
I believe division is, Ms. Van Twyver, did you?
I vote for it.
Okay, so it's 6-2. Okay. Number 3, Ms. Van Twyver will no longer serve as the alternate member on the Finance and Operations Committee. Any objections? All in favor?
I dare them.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, so that's, at least the committees are set. I don't know about the Finance Committee. We don't have an alternate. Ms. Van Twyver has certainly done more than her share, and I will make sure I am at Finance and Operations Committee meetings until we have somebody serving on that committee as the alternate. So, okay, quickly, we can go to unfinished business. Mr. Kaufman, you have key card access on there?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so move to direct the superintendent to reinstate key card access for all board members for the administration building and district schools.
Point of order. This was discussed and voted on at the last meeting. Are we going to bring it up at every meeting?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Oden put it on the agenda. I think you're right, Ms. Raymond, this was sent to the policy committee, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
It was. So she called it, I responded.
Community outreach, Mr.
Can I-
Kaufman.
Okay. So what, you skipped over, both of the key card access were moved to policy. Community outreach. I move to welcome the public and encourage all school community members, including parents, teachers, students, staff, administrators, and former employees, to freely and directly communicate with individual members of the Board of Education on any matter, without prior administrative notification, review, or consent, and without fear of retribution or retaliation pursuant to existing board policy IJNDB-R.
I object to the question.
Excuse me?
Second.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion?
I object to...
Wait a minute, Mr. Kaufman can speak to his motion.
But when you have to take a vote, object to the question means,
Okay.
do we even put this before the board? Because without fear or retribution or retaliation, this motion, it's just so inflammatory, and it just insinuates that there are people out there that are doing things that are who on the board is that who's doing this? I don't think this doesn't rise to the dignity of the board, and I don't think we should even put it before the board. I don't even think we should have it before the board. And when you object to the question, I would like to vote whether we should put this before the board or not, without discussion.
Okay, do you need a second for that?
I second it, because I totally agree with him.
Okay.
I can't speak to my motion?
I object to the question.
No, believe this overrules it.
Do we get to discuss his, his whatever he did there?
Hold on, I've got my cheat sheet, if
Please.
y'all indulge me. Okay, so it says, object to considering an undiplomatic or improper matter. Yes, you can interrupt the speaker. No, a second is not needed. No, it is not debatable. No, it is not amendable. It requires a 2/3.
Okay, thank you. 2/3 vote. No discussion.
So the motion is, can
What
you
was the
reread your
objection again,
motion?
please?
Mr. Guarino, can you reread your motion, please?
I don't have a motion. I'm objecting to this.
Objecting?
Putting this
Okay.
before, as business before the board. Because it's inflammatory, it's improper, and it just insinuates that there are people out there that we're not working together as a team, that there's some subterfuge going on, and it just makes for acrimony, and we need to be positive and work as a team.
Roll
and-
call.
and-
Okay.
And not do things
If we
like
can't
this.
speak to it, you shouldn't be speaking to it.
I think
Well,
we
she
need,
asked me a question. Excuse me, sir.
I think we need to have a roll call vote.
So,
A yes
a
vote.
yes vote would mean we take this up. A no vote means we don't take this up.
No.
Is that right? Or am I-
No, it's the opposite. A yes vote means that we are agreeing to the objection,
Okay.
and so the motion would not be considered.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
a no vote means that we will not accept the objection, and we will discuss the original motion.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
5-3, the yeses have it.
No, you didn't have to have 2/3, you have to have 6.
Oh, okay, so
It
We can
failed.
Take it
discuss
up.
now, right? Yep.
Objection fails. May I speak to my motion?
Yes, you may.
So, it was interesting, I forget the gentleman's name, the parent who came in and he was talking about that climate survey.
Mr. Sitar.
Thank you. So he made reference to that, climate survey from 2 years ago. I think it's, my memory is going to be rusty on the actual page number, but I think it was page 55 of that particular survey, where, if I recall correctly, and maybe even Mr. Marcoux might remember, that the word retaliation was put in as part of a question that the union had requested for that particular survey. If I had a couple of minutes, I can find it on my machine. But that's the origin and source of the word retaliation. That was the word that was used in that survey as requested by the union at that time. Oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
I want to just read it.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on it.
We need to take a vote to, if we're going to extend another 30 minutes or finish this. I'm sorry, it's time for the vote.
Move for 30 minutes extension?
Second. Oh,
Discussion? I hope there's none. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
No.
3?
I'd like a vote.
Excuse me,
It's
take the
Mr.
count.
Ray,
1, 2,
could you
3.
please wait until you're
5.
recognized?
5-3, the motion passes.
Right,
All right.
thank you.
So-
We're in discussion now.
Yes.
And he's talked to it, so I need to.
Mrs. Van Twyver was.
But let me say, I will stop at 10 o'clock to ensure that we have public comment and board member comments. It will stop at 10 o'clock. So let's move as fast as we can to get things done.
I'd like to comment on a previous board member's statement about inflammatory or retaliation. I sat through many, many board meetings where previous board members have spoken about people that they have received mail from that would not become public because they were afraid of retaliation, okay? So I think that's what this is in for. So I take it as a point of your lack of information about what is happened in the past. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of people that we had to listen to that said, well, I received so many emails and they won't come for, I said, well, let's have their names so it's not hearsay. And they would say, no, I'm not giving you your name because I'm afraid of retaliation. And I think that this would protect those people from that. So I'm going to vote for it.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I'm concerned if people are worried about voicing their opinions because of retaliation. That's not okay. We have a policy that says that people are allowed to reach out and speak to board members. I certainly get a number of emails in my inbox daily and weekly, and not all of them are happy with me, and some of them are. And I certainly hope that the public continues to, and staff and everyone continues to feel comfortable reaching out to board members or the board as a whole. I don't love the wording of the motion, but I certainly agree with what I think the intent is, which is to say you have a right to speak, we will hear you, and we certainly should not be retaliating or acting negatively because of whatever people say. So I agree with that feeling.
Ms. Hohensee and then Mr. Greeno, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Ms. Hohensee?
I see this as a move to welcome. It's a welcoming thing. I know when we had the grading, we only heard one side of that issue. I don't even know if this policy would resolve that problem. We had a majority of the teachers that did not like it, but were afraid to speak. So I just think it's an olive branch. It's a reach out that we're going to try to be non-judgmental as a district. If it gets traction, I think that's great. If not, there's certainly no law. So I will be voting for it.
Ms. Porter?
I'm a little confused. Who is doing the retaliating? Individual members of the board? The way this is worded, it's the board. I'm confused on who is doing the retaliating.
Staff. May I respond?
Ms.
Well, it was staff that the administration would retaliate against these people, these teachers and everything that
Does it say in here that, but the way that it's worded, welcome the public, all right, to freely and directly communicate with individual members of the Board of Ed on any matter without prior notification. So it sounds there as if board members are retaliating. If I'm reading that.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think a board member has ever retaliated, but I
don't think so.
believe that the intent here, from my interpretation, means that the administration, principals, whatever, cannot, and up, could not retaliate against an employee who brought a complaint against them.
Is that what it says, though?
Well, I believe that's what the intent
Well,
was.
well, the intent and what it says.
Can I clarify it?
Ms. Hohensee?
I think it says without prior administrative notification, review, or consent, and without fear of retribution. So it's saying you don't have to have permission to speak, to state your opinion, and it's administrative. It's trying to just open up discussion.
Mr. Kaufman and then Mr. Greeno.
I have the page that I wanted to make reference to. Do I have permission to project it?
Yeah. Can you read it, or is it that long?
Well, okay. So it's page 36. I was incorrect. The word was retribution, not retaliation. So this was question WC1_3. Staff in my school building can express views openly with colleagues without fear of retribution. So you may want to write these down. So the school district, it's by each school, and they don't summarize it. They have, I guess they have rolled up the whole staff. So 13% disagree, 21% 13% strongly disagree, 21% somewhat disagree, 17% was neutral, 27% said strongly disagree. I'm sorry again. Somewhat agree is 27, strongly agree 21, and don't know 2%. And there were just over 1,000 people who responded. So we have 13 and 21, so we have 34 plus the neutral for, was that 40, Ms. Owency? 34 plus 17, so 51% disagree or are neutral. So there's a significant number of people who disagree that they can openly express their views. So that's the origin of this. And in addition, there was an email from from Principal Burns back in November, where he specifically told his staff that if they had anything they wanted to get to the board, they should not go directly to the board, but rather through him to the assistant superintendent and eventually to the superintendent. So this is sitting out there, and I believe it's had a negative effect on communication with staff. And when you,
I'm sorry, I thought you were
and when you
done.
combine that with board members' reduced access to buildings, it becomes a theme. And when you add it to my experience when Mrs. Hohensee and we went to visit Pennachuck Middle School, where an assistant superintendent who just happened to be there that day and walked us through along with the assistant principal who was who was giving us the tour, that had a distinct and dampening effect on the quality of our conversation. We had none with staff, and we just were able to speak to the one teacher, really. We spoke to maybe one or two other people in conversation. But the point is
But I
that,
don't think this policy addresses that. This is about teachers coming to a board meeting or whatever, speaking up.
But I'm saying it speaks to environment. So even though this survey is from 2 years ago, the environment still persists. And I think teachers are looking, they want to know they can come and address the board discreetly without fear of retribution, which they've experienced in the past. And by the very nature of those three things I mentioned, that current still exists today.
Ms. Timmons and then Mr.
I'm
Green.
glad Mr. Kaufman said it was 2 years ago. In the last 90 days, I have been in many meetings with teachers up until this past weekend, past school vacation, a 3-day undoing racism class. And what was told to me is that the community have been more positive than ever. They are allowed to speak. I spoke to teachers at Cultural Connection, at all type of My Brother's Keeper, the Leader of Women Voters, all kinds of, and that sentiment is just not out there. And I'm out there in the community speaking with teachers, and they do not say that. They're very happy, they're very positive, and I think Ms. Porter can really stress on that or talk on that because she just left the school system. I cannot support this policy because it does not exist in my rural. Maybe in Mr. Kaufman's rural, but not in my rural and not the teachers I've spoken to. And I'm out there all the time. And teachers do come up to me without fear of retaliation or worry that I got your moment. It just does not exist.
Mr. Greeno, and then Ms. Porter, and then Dr. Mosley.
I agree with Ms. Timmons. I don't see this kind of atmosphere. I think what was said about those statistics in that climate survey were distorted. When you have neutral, it means they don't care either way. You don't count that against it. I've been dealing with statistics all the time. So there were only 13% who felt strongly about it, and some others that agreed. This is and I also agree with Ms. Porter that this is very confusing about who's doing the retaliation or whatever. And I have also been out there in the community, going to different functions, and the kind of teachers that we have and the kind of atmosphere that we have in our schools and among the staff is when you see a retired teacher going to a function and all her students, her former students, are coming up to her and hugging her, one right after another, that's the kind of atmosphere that we have in our schools. The teachers love their jobs. They love what they're doing. And I don't think there's anything out there that is holding people back. I've had plenty of emails about the temperature of the schools because our teachers are very concerned about the conditions in our schools. When it turns into the summertime, some of the schools we have a capital improvements program, deferred capital improvements program that we need to get money for because the air conditioners in some of the schools just aren't up to par. So I get emails. They don't fear for retribution. They care about the students. They're not afraid to speak up about their working conditions or speak up for their students. I just don't see it, and I don't think there's any need for this. And it just creates more acrimony and in subterfuge, and so I'm not going to support it.
I have Ms. Porter.
Okay. I was working when that survey was conducted, and I took part in that. And I think that there were specific things going on at that time that have since been addressed. Yep. I think the issues that came from that survey are not addressed in this particular wording. I don't think the two conflate. They don't go together. I don't think that this wording is a natural result of what that survey showed. There's a lot of intricacy that went into that that's not reflected here. And I'm also wondering about the enforcement ability of this. How do you enforce no retribution? What does that look like? That's a very hard thing to define. And I think that you're putting that in there with no enforcement mechanism. I think that maybe you're looking at that survey and hoping to follow up on it, which maybe is not a bad thing. I just don't think that this is the way to do it.
Madam President?
Dr. Mosley, I have Ms. Raymond and then Elizabeth.
I just think that
Ms. Van Twyver.
I believe that there's already a process in place for the public to come in and share their comments to the board. And we have a public comment at the beginning, we have public comment at the end. We've received correspondence through email from people. So I don't think that there is any way that anything that needs to be changed at this moment. I think that the community has an opportunity to come to the board meetings, to speak directly to the board, and there's no retribution or retaliation that can happen in this format. So reinventing the wheel at this point is unnecessary.
Ms. Raymond?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to step on your time.
Oh, that's all right. I very briefly, I don't read this as creating a policy, saying anything new, and I don't see the harm in having a statement from the board that says, we welcome people to come to us. We don't think there should be retaliation, even if you have something negative to say. So I'm actually going to vote for it. I think that the sentiment of anyone can say anything to us it sounds like many people think we're practicing that already, but I don't see the harm in taking a vote and saying, yes, we all are behind this idea that no one gets, people get to say what they want. So,
Ms. Van Twyver?
I'd like to ask the former speakers who receive emails if they ask the people who have written them if they are willing to use their names if you bring it before the board. Do you ask them that? Because I will be always asking for a name. I don't like hearsay, and I won't vote for hearsay. I want to know that these people are willing to stand up, as I have to do at every one of these meetings, and identify themselves so that we know that they're real people and not just prefabricated.
Madam President, do you want me to?
It is 1 minute before 10. I have Mr. Kaufman and then Ms. Hohensie, and then we're going to have public comment.
Thank you. So I'd just like to point out to the board, you might remember earlier this year, the chair included in our packet an anonymous letter from someone. So there are people out there, and the chair saw it fit that it was important enough to put it in our packet. So I think that demonstrates there are people who do wish to remain anonymous, and in this particular case, the chair saw fit to distribute it, an anonymous letter. So yeah, it's important feedback to get, and thank you, Ms. Raymond.
And can I just clarify, the chair saw fit not to read it when I was told by Corporation Counsel that I had every right to read it. So please acknowledge that also.
But the fact is, you included it in the packet. You
Yes,
saw fit
and
to do that.
legally, that was the right thing to do, I was told by Corporation Counsel. So thank you very much. Ms. Hohensie.
Thank you. The operative words here is just, this is welcoming the public to communicate with individual members of the board without without retribution. I think this is just a welcoming statement. If you think it's already happening, then support it. And I hope that we will vote on this before we go to public comment.
Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to answer Ms. Van Twyver's question about where the email is that I received. It was, I believe, New Searles School, and you have the email because it was an email that was sent to all of us. It was the very first email that was sent to all of us about the air conditioning and I don't remember the teacher's name, but it's in there. If you look, go way down there, and you'll see it.
Madam President, may I respond? The statement I made was, do you ask the people if they're willing to give you're willing to use their names when you get something that you bring before?
I'm sure. I'll ask them.
I'm just asking that be done, because I don't like to have hearsay.
Well,
I don't want to have some imaginary person that
I will
might
just,
do that.
I will just say, I'm not going to support this. I don't think it's necessary. If somebody doesn't feel confident in what they believe in, to feel that they can say it publicly, then I don't think this is going to make any difference whatsoever. So, as somebody who taught in the system for years and had no problem at all coming forward at board meetings and saying what I had to say, and I never felt any retaliation. But I know there are people that do feel that, and they don't speak up. So, looking for a vote on this?
Bowden, call the question, please.
Yes.
She just asked for a vote. So do we need to call the question
No,
and vote twice?
I'd like to take a vote on it.
I just want to be
Okay,
patient.
on the motion,
Roll call, please.
Can you reread the motion?
excuse me,
Sorry.
would you like, yes, Madam President, what would you like me to do?
Reread the motion?
Reread the motion? Okay, the motion, on the motion, which is to welcome the public and encourage all school community members, including parents, teachers, students, staff, administrators, and former employees, to freely and directly communicate with individual members of the Board of Education on any matter without prior administrative notification, review, or consent, and without fear or retribution or retaliation pursuant to existing board policy IJNDB-R. On the motion, Mrs. Oden.
No.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Ms. Raymond.
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
No.
Ms. Hohensie.
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver.
Yes?
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Porter.
No.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4 noes and 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses. The motion does not carry.
I would like to now go to the public comment section for the members that are sitting there. You state your name and address.
Yes, hi, Sue Newman, 25 Charlotte Avenue. The comments I have tonight are directed to the student board members. I know they had to leave, and I told them I was still going to stay and give my remarks. My remarks have to do with their recent remarks regarding the March 14th student walkout here. And I would just comment it's not anecdotally, it's a historical fact. The first town meeting in America was held on March 14th, Boston's Faneuil Hall. Don't ask me the year because I don't know that year that it happened. Anyway, for student board members, Ms. Sweeney and Mr. Gillis, I was very impressed with the student board comments both of you made about the March 14th student walkout. Ms. Sweeney spoke specifically about Nashua South. Your group wanted your school's walkout to be safe, peaceful, and meaningful. Your group also considered, the potential consequences of your actions, but you also knew that your walkout needed to happen. I was especially impressed to hear and read that at no time during this process did the administration try and push any agenda on the students. You applied lessons learned in your English and social studies classes. You and your student colleagues worked together to make your voices heard and included students with various political views. Your demonstration was not partisan, and you said you were not coerced or forced to participate. From Mr. Gillis' comments, I so appreciated his voicing his thoughts on the walkout and if the issue of gun control should be the focus, and that it was his choice to not participate in the walkout. You, Mr. Gillis, also wrote that the event wasn't politicized by administration and that your non-participation encouraged healthy conversation between yourself, the teacher, and the other student who was with you. Whether a student walked out or not on March 14th, I believe all of our students were there for their fellow Parkland student colleagues. Both of you, again referring to Ms. Sweeney and Mr. Gillis, spoke and wrote about the need to have your fellow students' voices heard. Your voices were heard. There's a Dakota Indian proverb that reads, we will be known forever by the tracks we leave. As you two so honorably continue and have patiently continued to represent your fellow students, I believe that the tracks you leave on your family and friends, your teachers and schools will definitely be remembered. Your voices were heard, your voices will be heard, and I thank you. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Very nice.
Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane, President of the Nashua Teachers Union. I have a few notes. It's only one page, I promise. Climate survey, to piggyback on this discussion. When that question or those questions were written 2 years ago, we had a problem in the district with staff members fearing retribution for their comments on various things. Since that time, I think we've seen an improvement with that part. Is it gone away? No, it hasn't gone away. Is it better? Absolutely it is. But it is still a concern. I think those concerns don't necessarily come to you, but they come to me and to the officers of the union, and we address them as they happen. Days versus hours. This will be the 3rd year that I've talked about this with central office, to no fault of the current administration. They weren't here 2 years ago or last year to have that conversation with us. We'd be happy to discuss looking at changes to all 4 collective bargaining units that may need to be made to switch to that once we've had our retro paid. Retro and raises. I have 1,018 or so angry teachers who are watching this meeting right now saying very interesting things about what's going on with the retro and the raises. We settled this agreement on January 29th, with my membership voting yes, this board voting unanimously yes, and it went to the Board of Aldermen. I understand that the Board of Aldermen did not ratify this agreement until March 13th. However, on January 30th, I said, we need to start looking at this. And then I continued to say that until we started looking at it. And then we looked at it. And then April 12th was a date that we thought maybe we might get it. Then that came and went, okay. April 26th came and went. I spent Thursday of my vacation dealing with angry teachers because nothing came from central office about this again. It is not my responsibility to communicate with the membership on management responsibilities. I get management responsibilities thrown in my face by members of this district office all the time, and it is not my responsibility to share that information with the membership. I find out on Friday afternoon before vacation that, well, it's not looking good for the 26th because we have to make sure everything's all set. I had been asking since January 30th to make sure everything was all set. And here we are on April 30th with no retro and no raises. And I have 1,000 angry teachers ready to do whatever I ask them to do right now. So I am pulling the plug on all district committees until further notice. The executive board meets tomorrow. They will direct me to do what we do next, and my board of directors meets on May 10th. This is unacceptable. Communication would have helped in this situation to the membership, to me. When I read information about this in the Nashua Telegraph that I didn't have ahead of time, that's a problem. So until further notice, there will be no participation from the Nashua Teachers Union on any district committee. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who hasn't signed up who would like to speak? Okay. We'll start with board member comments. Ms. Timmons, we have about 5 minutes, 4?
It's late, no comment.
Okay. Ms. Porter? Mr. Guarino?
No comment at this time, Madam President.
Ms. Raymond?
No comment at this time, thank you.
Okay, I just want to say I attended the Boys and Girls Club honoring our teachers and our students. It was great. Bicentennial in Amherst Street, had an opportunity to go to the Celebration of Learning, well attended, and had an opportunity to go to the play at Fairgrounds where 60 or 70 of the kids there participated in Alice in Wonderland Takeoff. And bless those teachers, that's a lot of middle school kids to watch, and it seemed like they all enjoyed it. That's all I have. Ms. O'Hensie?
Yes, I have a comment. The board president needs to enable transparency. Board members have asked repeatedly for meetings with council to be updated on a wide variety of issues, from updates on negotiations, union negotiations, to grievances and lawsuits. The board must be updated on these issues. So I'm just repeating my requests.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. The first thing I would like to do is extend an apology to the members of the Nashua Teachers Union. These are prepared remarks. I gave some thought to this. I'm sorry that the district and the union negotiation teams failed to resolve a well-known and frequently discussed contract issue. As a member of the 2 previous negotiation teams, I can say that the board was aware of the problem, and I honestly thought the issue was resolved in the approved contract. I don't know why it wasn't resolved in the subsequent agreement. Unfortunately, the board only learned of this lingering problem after the article appeared in the newspaper this weekend. The board had no visibility on this issue since October. Considering the importance of the issue, the lack of communication and outreach to the board defies logic. I don't understand why the superintendent, union president, and the board representative kept the board uninformed until we had a chance to discuss this briefly tonight. There's one more important matter I need to address. Mrs. Oden and fellow members and members of the public, please be advised that I have reached the saturation point of derogatory, hurtful, spiteful, and disrespectful emails by the only male member of our new board. Since his arrival on the board, he has consistently insulted and bullied me both personally and professionally, mostly by email, but mostly by interruption at board meetings, as was the case tonight. Madam President, I have lost track of my request to you asking for your intervention. Are you aware as you are aware, I have kept my comments to a minimum and only requested your intervention. Madam President, your silence on this matter speaks volumes. Why have you not intervened? The last thing I want to say is, I'll just leave it that way. Thank you.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I have three things that I want to comment on. In the communication request
log,
information request log, 18.24 has not been delivered to me, and somehow that change, the name information requested was changed. My request was for the total amount of money that the operating budget, the Title I, all those people were going to be paying. I received information from Mr. Donovan the day before he went on vacation, saying that he was doing the budget at that time for it, and that kind of questioned why we didn't have total amounts and whether that total amount was put in our big budget. So that has not been delivered to me yet. The second one, 1825, I did pick it up, and I was very impressed with the data that I got, the sheet that I got with information about the different programs that we have, and it was the kind of information that would help me make a decision, would help explain. There was only 18 things that they replaced, but that was still very good. It wasn't 24, but I was very pleased with it. The problem I have now is that if we're going to be following Dr. Mosley's policy that everybody gets the information at the same time, I do not believe that was put in our packets for the rest to see. And I think you'll be very impressed to see what this lady that has taken over with the title, whatever, let's see, I can't remember what group she's at, the
Title I.
First Century program, has done. I mean, she did an excellent job. That was my first thing. The second thing is following HR policies. We have not been doing what we're supposed to do with HR policies, and I want to remind the administration that they are to have respect with our policies and to follow them. And I'm going to sing that until the day I don't have to anymore. Now to leave you on a good note and a happy note, I attended Nashua Sings. It was the most spectacular night. They are remarkable. The young elementary students were better this year than I've ever seen them. That was wonderful. I went to jazz night. I cannot tell you how impressed I am with our jazz. Bishop Girton was invited. They played, and they were dynamite. And I thought, oh no. But when our group played, I was blown away, and I even informed the district coordinator for that. We have the best music program in the ground. And the third thing is that I went to Fairgrounds play with Alice at Wonderland, and that was dynamite once again. This is the third time I've attended plays at Fairgrounds, and they do a remarkable job. So I just want to point that out. They evidently had a Friday night, they had a dinner along with it, so I think that was a big success, and I'm so glad to have been invited to come and see that. All three things, they were really remarkable. And the flowers are blooming. That's the other thing I wanted to say.
Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, can I have a chance to speak?
I'm sorry.
No, I would just like to say to Mr. Kaufman, I am just tired of so many members of this board using email to communicate and sending it to the whole board. We have been told by Attorney Bolton, by Attorney Clausen to not do that, and I refuse to use email to communicate that way. It's against the right-to-know law. We hear all about that, and I will not communicate that way. To Ms. Hohensie, I invited, at Mr. Kaufman's request, Attorney Bolton to come to a meeting, and he was answering some questions that had to do with questions that board members had, and he was treated so rudely he got up and left. So for you to say, I have not set up meetings with attorneys, I set up the meeting with Attorney Clausen tonight, so you are being very disingenuous in that.
May I respond to that?
No, it's time
We
to
had a
adjourn.
15-minute meeting. I
Madam
continued in the
President, I'd
hall.
like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
And I have no problem with Mr. Clausen tonight.
On the motion to adjourn, Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
I heard somebody request a roll call.
Mr. Kaufman?
I heard someone, oh, you are, thank you. Yes, adjourned.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 10:22.